Chapter 21:18. After 2 hours of interaction, Ji Tianqing had a good understanding of their natures. Then, he called out the names of the 6 generals and asked them to stay. The other 20 generals were all dismissed and left the study. When only Ji Tianqing and the 6 generals were left in the study, he said, "The 6 of you are all generals that can catch Ben Shuai's eye. Tonight, Ben Shuai will be leading the army to battle. As for where he will be attacking, it must be kept a secret for now. This is a good opportunity for you to make a name for yourselves. I hope you will cherish it." The 6 generals were very familiar with his legendary deeds. When they heard that they were going to battle tonight, they were immediately excited and overjoyed. "That's great. We will be able to follow Marshal Ji to battle tonight. Many thanks for Marshal Ji's support, and for giving us the chance to prove ourselves. Marshal Ji, may this general be so bold as to ask, if we win the battle, will the military merit reward be doubled?" "Hey, you even know this?" Ji Tianqing glanced at the generals, both annoyed and amused. The 6 generals didn't feel awkward and quickly nodded in agreement. "Of course, we are all familiar with Marshal Ji's legendary deeds and experiences. To tell you the truth, before Marshal Ji came to Starfall Valley, this general had already regarded Marshal Ji as his idol. Marshal Ji, not only are your martial prowess outstanding and your schemes unparalleled, you are also very generous to your subordinates. This is something that everyone knows. This general is not flattering you, but Marshal Ji's martial prowess, talent, schemes, and breadth of mind are enough to conquer all the generals and soldiers in the world. You are a peerless martial talent that only appears once in 1,000 years. To be able to fight for you on the battlefield in this lifetime is a blessing that we have cultivated for 3 lifetimes." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, "Since you know Ben Shuai so well, you should know that Ben Shuai has never liked to be flattered, much less cared about false reputation. Don't flatter Ben Shuai and don't flatter him. If you have the energy, you might as well use it on the battlefield." The 6 generals hurriedly restrained their smiles and put on a solemn expression. They cupped their hands and said in a sonorous tone, "This general will follow Marshal Ji's instructions." Then, the general with the handlebar mustache asked carefully, "General Ji, about the military merits and rewards?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said decisively, "Same old rules, double." The 6 generals were greatly relieved. Their faces were filled with pleasant surprise as they bowed in unison. "Long live General Ji. General Ji is wise. Great Marshal Ji. On behalf of the 100,000 soldiers under my command, this general thanks General Ji for your generosity." With Marshal Ji's words, "This general and the 100,000 warriors under my command will definitely sacrifice our lives for him." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a dignified tone, "All right, go back and prepare for war. Tonight, we will gather outside the Valley of Fallen Stars." "As you command." The 6 generals cupped their fists and replied in unison. After that, they left the study room full of ambition and went back to reorganize their troops with glowing faces. The study room fell into silence. Ji Tianqing closed his eyes and rubbed his eyebrows, thinking about tonight's battle plan. At this time, soft footsteps sounded and a refreshing woman's fragrance wafted into his nose. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes and saw Guanji in a white dress, carrying a jade plate as she gracefully walked into the study room. She came to Ji Tianqing's side and took out a pot of spirit tea and 2 plates of spirit fruit from the jade plate and placed them in front of Ji Tianqing. "General Ji, you didn't sleep all night because of the battle, so you must be tired. This lowly concubine has prepared some calming tea and fruits for you. Please enjoy them." Guan Jiqiao smiled as she looked at Ji Tianqing, her eyes sparkling like autumn water, causing one's heart to itch. At this moment, she was wearing a long moon-white dress that accentuated her perfect figure. However, she had put away her innate charm and seductive power, so she didn't appear wanton or charming at all. Instead, her temperament was gentle and virtuous. Ji Tianqing glanced at her but didn't show the slightest appreciation. Instead, he frowned and said in a displeased tone, "Who told you to wear this white dress? Take it off." Guanji froze for a moment and immediately lowered her head, her pretty face and white neck blushing. "General Ji, is this the place?" Her voice was as small as a mosquito's and her posture was shy and timid. Obviously, she had misunderstood. Ji Tianqing frowned again and said in a dignified tone, What nonsense are you thinking? Ben Shuai's meaning is that you go back and change your clothes, otherwise don't appear in front of Ben Shuai again. Ah! Guanji was stunned, showing a bewildered expression on his face. Ji Tianqing saw her stupidity and said in a deep voice, such an elegant and simple white dress, especially with tassels and cloud patterns, only she is worthy of wearing it. A prostitute like you actually imitating an otherworldly fairy is really dirty to Ben Shuai's eyes. Guanji suddenly realized that Ji Tianqing was angry because of this. The she he spoke of was definitely his most beloved woman. Thinking of this, Guanji suddenly felt wronged and wanted to cry. After all, Ji Tianqing had called her a prostitute in front of her face and looked down on her so much. It was really too hurtful. But she didn't dare show the slightest dissatisfaction. She could only hold back her tears and bow. General Ji, please calm your anger. This lowly concubine has offended you. This lowly concubine will go change her clothes. Finished speaking, she bowed and left the study. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to look at her. He didn't even touch the spirit tea and spirit fruit on the table. Instead, he turned around and entered the secret room to make charms. However, after Guanji left the study, her expression quickly changed. A moment ago, she was teary-eyed and pitiful. The next moment, she returned to normal. Her tears disappeared and a sneer appeared in the depths of her eyes. Ha ha ha. So it's not that you don't like women nor do you like men. You already have someone in your heart. Humph. The cold and emotionless Kenshin of the past actually has a sweetheart now. How ridiculous. As this thought flashed through Guanji's mind, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a contemptuous sneer. The day passed quickly. The news that Ji Tianqing was going to lead the army to battle spread throughout Starfall Valley. The 6 generals chosen by him became the object of envy of all the other generals. Everyone knew that these fellows were following the invincible General Ji, and would soon achieve great achievements, be promoted, and become famous all over the world. They didn't dare to do anything, but they received General Ji's favor and support. It was simply like smoke rising from their ancestors' graves. The 600,000 elite soldiers under the command of the 6 generals were also envied by the other soldiers. For a time, the atmosphere in Starfall Valley was lively as countless people were talking about this matter. Everyone was waiting with bated breath, waiting to see Ji Tianqing lead his troops into battle and create another glorious battle record. Late at night, the sky was dark as ink without the slightest starlight. Outside Starfall Valley, an army of 600,000 had gathered, arranged in 6 formations, looking mighty and majestic. Every soldier's face was full of ambition and a strong fighting spirit exuded from their bodies. Chapter 21:19. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky, looking towards the north in silence. The 6 generals rushed to his side one after another and stood respectfully behind him. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Shi Qingshan's troops have finished their preparations and are awaiting your orders. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Yun Heng's troops have finished their preparations and are ready to set out at any time. Marshal Ji Jianfei Yang's troops. The 6 generals reported the military situation one by one, indicating that they were ready to set out. Ji Tianqing nodded lightly and was about to wave his hand to give an order. At that moment, Du Changchang led more than a dozen generals and flew over from the night sky. When he arrived, Du Changchang cupped his fists towards Ji Tianqing and asked with a concerned expression, Marshal Ji, although this old man is old, he is still a hot-blooded man. Now that Marshal Ji is going to set out, this old man is also willing to follow Marshal Ji to the battlefield and experience Marshal Ji's demeanor and might. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and cupped his fists. Marshal Du, you stay in Falling Star Valley, lest our nest be destroyed by the demon race. In addition, you must send out all the scouts to roam around the 2 demon race camps. Be sure to maintain your deterrence. At the same time, you must mobilize an army of 500,000 and be ready to reinforce us at any time, or block the demon race's reinforcements. Du Changchang listened carefully and nodded repeatedly. Marshal Ji, please rest assured. These are all necessary preparations. This old man is well aware of them. This old man congratulates Marshal Ji for achieving victory and creating more glory. This old man will prepare a celebratory feast in the Marshal's palace and await Marshal Ji's triumphant return. Ji Tianqing nodded and waved his hand to the 6 generals. All troops set out. Soon after, the 600,000-strong army set out. Everyone rushed through the mountain range, leaving behind muffled rumbling sounds and billowing clouds of dust, quickly disappearing into the night. Du Changchang and the generals stood in the night sky for a long time before turning around and returning to the valley. At the same time, in a secret room deep in the marshal's palace, Guanji took out a communication jade slip with a solemn expression and quietly sent it out. The 6 generals followed Ji Tianqing through the night sky. They flew for over 10,000 miles, but they still didn't know the target of their attack. Finally, Shi Qingshan couldn't hold back his doubts and asked, "General Ji, we've already flown north for over 10,000 li. The area within 5,000 kilometers was occupied by the demon race. Not only were there large camps, but there were also strongholds. Where are we going to attack tonight?" The other generals didn't say anything, but they also looked at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes. A playful smile appeared on Ji Tianqing's face as he uttered softly, "The middle camp at the foot of Mount Fish Dragon." Upon hearing this answer, the 6 generals froze, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. What? The main camp of the demon race? Did I hear that right? Oh my God! Marshal Ji, are you going straight to the enemy's den? Unbelievable! Marshal Ji, you simply don't play by the rules. It's too scary. There are at least 1 million demon race soldiers in the middle camp. Marshal Ji, are you sure we're not going to deliver snacks? It's not necessarily snacks, it might even be a midnight snack for the demon race. Ji Tianqing glanced at them and snapped, "What nonsense are you talking about? Are you afraid?" Yun Hang muttered with a depressed expression, "We have an army of 600,000, and we're going to attack the most heavily defended middle camp. Isn't that just throwing our lives away? At that time we'll all become the demon race's midnight snack." Ji Tianqing frowned and was about to reprimand him. On the side, Shi Qingshan and Jian Feiyang hurriedly tried to persuade Yun Hang. "General Yun, what you said is wrong. Isn't this just boosting the morale of the demon race and destroying the prestige of our army? So what if it's a 1,000,000-strong army? So what if it's the middle camp of the demon race? Under General Ji's iron hooves, under General Ji's peerless divine might, 1,000,000 demon race soldiers are nothing but dregs. They'll be annihilated in an instant." The other 2 generals also hurriedly tried to persuade him. They were very confident in Ji Tianqing. "General Yun, don't worry. General Ji led an army of 500,000 at Changlong Empire's Celestial Face Pass and destroyed the demon race's main camp, wiping out 1,000,000 demon race soldiers. Everyone, don't forget that General Ji is the god of death whose name shakes the world. He can stop 1,000,000 demon race soldiers with one sword." This general boldly guesses that General Ji will definitely sneak into the demon race's main camp and assassinate their generals and experts. "We'll lead an army of 600,000 and lie in ambush outside the demon race's main camp. We'll take advantage of the chaos and kill our way in. Naturally, we'll be invincible." Other than Yun Hang, the other 5 generals worshipped Ji Tianqing very much. They trusted him almost blindly. Knowing that they were going to attack the middle camp of the demon race, not only were they not worried, they were even excited. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to say more. He said in a dignified tone, "Sima Kai is right. Ben Shuai's plan is actually an open one. He'll use absolute force to sweep through everything. Later, Ben Shuai will give you some talismans to break the demon race's main defense array. Ben Shuai will sneak into the demon race's main camp alone. You guys will lie in ambush outside and wait for Ben Shuai's signal to attack." He briefly explained the plan and the process. The generals had all heard of his deeds in the Empire of White Frost and Changlong Empire. They immediately understood what he meant. 2 hours later it was midnight. The army of 600,000 slowed down and lowered their marching sounds and movements. They quietly arrived at the foot of Fish Dragon Mountain. The Fish Dragon Mountain was a lone peak that was 30,000 feet tall and had a precipitous terrain. The demon race had hollowed out the mountain and built tunnels and caves that extended in all directions. Hundreds of thousands of demon race soldiers were stationed there. Many tall and majestic palaces were built at the peak of the mountain. Those were the residences of the demon race's generals and the location of the scout camp. Even at the foot of the mountain, there were rows of houses built on the surrounding wasteland. Hundreds of thousands of demon race soldiers were stationed there. A fortress of black light with a radius of 150 kilometers covered the ground like a canopy, protecting the entire central camp. Even though it was late at night, the demon race's camp was still lit with specks of light, filled with black mist and dark red blood energy. There were also several dozen scouts and patrol squads patrolling the demon race's camp, monitoring the surroundings. Ji Tianqing used the celestial sphere secret technique and silently approached Fish Dragon Mountain. After breaking through the defensive sacred array, he infiltrated the central camp. The 6 generals led the army and spread out into 6 squads, lying in ambush around Fish Dragon Mountain. Everyone did their best to conceal their tracks and auras, doing their best to avoid being discovered by the demon race. They patiently waited for the right moment and the order. An hour later, Ji Tianqing reached the peak of Fish Dragon Mountain and silently infiltrated the largest commander's palace in the center. He did not think much before entering the commander's palace. No one had discovered his tracks, and the central camp was very peaceful. However, when he entered the commander's palace, he discovered that the situation was not good. Logically speaking, the commander's palace, which took up an area of 3,000 feet, should have many demon race guards, demon generals, and experts living there. However, when he secretly probed with his spiritual sense, he discovered that the commander's palace was empty. Chapter 21:20. There must be something fishy going on. The abnormality in the commander's palace made Ji Tianqing realize that there might be an ambush here. But on second thought, that shouldn't be the case. Although he had announced in the day that he was going to lead the army out tonight, but he didn't reveal where exactly they were going to attack. He only announced the answer when the army was about to reach Fish Dragon Mountain. It was impossible for the news to be leaked. Moreover, he had used his divine perception to check the commander's palace and didn't find any powerful traps or ambushes. There were only many defensive arrays and secret passages. It was very normal. Since there's no ambush, why is the commander's palace so empty? It's fine if the demon generals don't live here, but why are there so few guards? Ji Tianqing was puzzled and felt that something was wrong. So, he quietly entered the commander's palace and approached a few guards. These guards were guarding a secret passage. The ground and walls were made of black stone, and they had set up an array that could isolate sound and divine senses. The passage meandered downwards and seemed to lead to the underground of the commander's palace. It was so dark that nothing could be seen. When Ji Tianqing came to their side, they didn't notice and were still whispering to each other. Have the offerings been sent in? General Hu Cha has sent in more than 80,000 blood, qi, and essence souls. General Hu Cha brought 4 blood monarchs and infiltrated the Scarlet Sun Empire. They massacred an entire city and only managed to gather 80,000 blood and essence souls. Yes, only martial artists of origin core realm and above have blood, qi, and essence souls that can be used by Lord Devil Saint. Shut up, have you forgotten the commander's orders? Don't talk about this anymore. Stop talking, General Hu Cha and the 4 blood monarchs are about to come out. If he hears your discussion, be careful of your heads. The guards discussed for a while and then quickly shut their mouths. Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, offerings? 80,000 blood, qi, and essence souls? 4 Devil Saint? Could it be Devil Saint Songyu? He was heavily injured by me and urgently needs large amounts of blood, qi, and essence souls to heal his injuries. Who would have thought that after he fled back to the Crimson Sun Empire, he would not guard the Heavenly Wolf Pass but instead hide on the Ichthyosaur Mountain? What a surprise! If he's really hiding here, then I've hit the jackpot. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile, his eyes filled with anticipation. He quietly passed through the dark tunnel and walked towards the depths of the tunnel. 300 meters later, there was a corner in front of him, which was also guarded by 4 guards. Just as he was about to turn the corner, he saw a tall and mighty demon general in black armor walking over with heavy steps. This demon general's eyes were very sharp, and his body exuded a terrifying murderous aura. His strength had also reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that this person was definitely a fierce general under Devil Sage Songyu's command. He was also the General Hu Cha that the guards spoke of. Sure enough, when the 4 bodyguards saw General Hu Cha walking over, They hurriedly knelt on one knee and saluted. If it were any other day, Ji Tianqing would have killed General Hu Cha without hesitation. However, the current situation was special and related to Devil Sage Song Yu. He suppressed his murderous aura and hid in the corner to wait. Only when General Hu Cha was far away did he continue along the tunnel. Another 300 meters later, a tall stone door appeared at the end of the tunnel. The black stone door was engraved with the image of a demon god, and set up a saint-level defensive array. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered to himself, "Once I break this array, I'll leak my magic power aura and alert the guards in the tunnel. Forget it, time is of the essence. I can't care so much." He made up his mind and used the God's Eye mystic technique to observe the array on the stone door. In just a few moments he saw through this saint-level array and found a way to break it. Then, he formed a seal with both hands and began to cast a spell. He shot out a pure white light and injected it into the stone door. The saint-level demon array on the stone door was immediately corroded by the white light and quickly dissipated. However, at the same time, the white light and magic power aura that appeared out of nowhere also alerted the guards in the tunnel. "Something's wrong. Go and see what's going on. It's magic power aura. It's a human. Human powerhouses are invading. Someone come quickly." The originally quiet tunnel was immediately filled with exclamations and shouts. 8 guards holding swords and sabers rushed over with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing ignored them and slammed his palms on the stone door. With a loud bang, the black stone door, which was about 300 meters tall, shattered into pieces on the spot. Countless gravel splashed out and was wrapped in a violent airwave that swept through the entire tunnel. The 8 guards had just rushed over when they were blown away by the airwave. Ji Tianqing didn't even spare them a glance. With a flash, he passed through the shattered stone door and entered a spacious hall. This vast hall was the first underground floor of the Commander-in-Chief's palace. It was called the Underground Palace for short. The hall was about 300 meters in radius. It was very dark and the air was filled with a dark red mist. The floor and walls were made of huge black stones. They were engraved with images of demon gods and asuras. They were ferocious and terrifying. And in the middle of the hall, there was a 30-meter-tall sacrificial altar. The altar was made of blood crystals. It was dark red in color, with many purple and green gems interspersed within. At the bottom of the sacrificial altar was a blood pool with a radius of 100 meters. Dark red blood water surged and rose from it. Around the sacrificial altar were 9 stone pillars carved with ancient demon beasts. They were vaguely arranged in a mysterious array. Ji Tianqing only took 2 glances before he frowned and sneered. "Soul-sealing blood-fusing array? It's actually an ancient mystic technique that was lost 1,000 years ago. It's a top ultimate technique of the blood demon sect. It looks like this is another ultimate technique passed down by the ancestor Fiend Celestial." The soul-sealing blood-fusing array was a healing mystic technique unique to the blood demon sect. No matter how badly injured a demon powerhouse was, as long as their physical body was not destroyed, they could use the sacrificial altar and mystic technique to absorb the blood and essence of billions of living beings to recover from their injuries at the fastest speed. When Ji Tianqing saw this array, he was certain that demon sage Songyo was definitely here. As expected, when he raised his head to look at the top of the sacrificial altar, he indeed saw a black figure sitting cross-legged in a ball of blood light. That was a middle-aged demon male in black robes. His body was thin and lean, and his appearance was like a demon wolf. He had strong arms and sharp claws. There was a huge triangular eye on his chest. There was even a pair of wings and a large tail on his back. It was demon sage Songyo. At this very moment he was wrapped in dark red blood light. His eyes were closed and he was immersed in cultivation. His figure was hazy and illusory. His aura was also fluctuating. Clearly, his injuries had not fully recovered. Chapter 21-21. Before entering the main camp of the MO, Ji Tianqing had not thought that Song Yu would be hiding here. After all, everyone thought that Song Yu was guarding the main camp of the MO outside Celestial Wolf Pass. The so-called pleasant surprise was only for Ji Tianqing. He had been preparing to find Song Yu when Song Yu was in the commander's palace. Song Yu was startled awake by his voice. He immediately ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. His gaze passed through the dark red mist and stared straight at Ji Tianqing. His expression immediately changed. "It's you, Ji Tianqing." Song Yu frowned fiercely. His purple eyes flashed viciously as his body gave off strong anger and murderous intent. He clearly had not expected that Ji Tianqing would come to Fish Dragon Mountain and infiltrate the underground palace of the commander's palace. This seat was not outside Celestial Wolf Pass and purposely hid in the underground palace of Fish Dragon Mountain. "I also concealed the news. How did you find this place? Speak. Did some bastard leak the news?" He glared angrily at Ji Tianqing and asked in a dark tone. When his whereabouts were exposed, his first reaction was that someone had leaked the news. That was why he was so furious. Ji Tianqing followed his words and sneered. "Of course. If your subordinate had not leaked the news, how could I have found this place?" Song Yu became even angrier. He shouted with a vicious expression, "Which traitor betrayed this seat?" Ji Tianqing showed an amused smile and sneered. "Forgive me for not being able to tell you. Guess yourself." Song Yu was so angry he wanted to spit blood. His gaze constantly changed as he thought of who could have leaked the news. At this time, 8 disheveled guards passed through the shattered stone door and charged into the underground palace. "Kill him. Take him down. We cannot let him disturb Lord Emoshang's cultivation." The guards shouted and swung their swords and sabers as they charged at Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. In an instant, saber light, sword shadows, and scarlet blood light swept towards Ji Tianqing like a gale. Ji Tianqing didn't move at all. He didn't even turn around to look. He casually waved his hand and slapped behind him with the back of his hand. Boom! With a muffled explosion, the huge golden palm shattered everyone's attack. Furthermore, the 8 guards were also struck by the golden palm, and they spat out mouthfuls of blood as they flew backward. Everyone fell to the ground in a mess. After landing on the ground, they did not move at all. They died on the spot. After killing 8 guards in one move, Ji Tianqing wielded the sword of burial of heaven. He looked at Song Yu with murderous intent and shouted coldly, "Song Yu, your time has come." Song Yu's expression was ugly, and his heart was filled with fear and worry. Nevertheless, he remained calm and collected, sitting steadily on the altar and yelling coldly, "Ji Tianqing, so what if you can find this place? Don't tell me you think that I didn't make the necessary preparations just because I was hiding here to heal my injuries? I originally planned to settle the score with you after I recovered from my injuries. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then how can I let you down? Tonight, this place will be your burial ground." Song Yu's voice was low, and his tone was powerful. It was filled with confidence and dominance. Ji Tianqing could not help but frown. A thought popped into his mind. The demon race has always been sinister and cunning. Did Song Yu really set up an ambush here? At that moment, Song Yu's expression changed. His figure became illusory and blurry as he teleported out of the underground palace. Swoosh! The moment his figure disappeared, the 9 stone pillars around the altar suddenly released destructive blood-colored light beams that blasted toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing instantly understood that Song Yu was bluffing. He had already planned to escape. He was about to be hit by the 9 blood-colored light beams. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to use the Armillary Sphere secret technique, and his figure disappeared into the darkness. Boom, 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 boom. The 9 blood-colored pillars of light slammed into the black stone-paved ground with a deafening boom. The ground was smashed into smithereens. More than half of the Commander-in-Chief's palace collapsed, and countless rocks and bricks fell. The underground palace was in chaos. Even the altar was destroyed by the shockwave, and cracks appeared all over it. Ji Tianqing had already merged with the world. He transferred the power of the 9 blood-colored light beams to the ground within 1,000 miles. The entire Dragonfish Mountain and the surrounding hundreds of miles of ground shook violently, producing muffled rumbling sounds. Ji Tianqing was unharmed. He did not linger for a moment. He hurriedly teleported out of the underground palace and arrived above Dragonfish Mountain. Under the pitch-black night sky, a faint black light was speeding toward the north. The black light was extremely fast, and its aura was also very powerful. It far surpassed ordinary demon generals and demon lords. Ji Tianqing naturally knew that it was Song Yu. who was fleeing for his life. A cold murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He hurriedly teleported and gave chase. Swish, swish, swish. In just 3 short breaths, he had teleported more than 50 miles and blocked Song Yu's path. Heaven-cleaving sword. He roared with murderous intent. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he slashed out a 100-meter-long golden sword at Song Yu. Song Yu was forced to stop. He sent out a dozen black shadow claws to block the attack of the giant sword. Bam, bam, bam. The claws clashed with the giant sword, producing a series of muffled sounds that reverberated in the night sky. The claws were all shattered, but the giant sword's power did not decrease at all. It slashed at Song Yu. Song Yu was sent flying back, and he let out a pained grunt. Fortunately, he had recovered 70% of his strength. He was still a demon saint that could not be underestimated. This sword strike only left a trace of blood on his body, causing him to suffer a light injury. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky, holding the sword of burial of heaven. He looked at Song Yu with a cold smile and said in a contemptuous tone, "As a demon saint and commander-in-chief, you abandoned your million-strong demon army and fled for your life. Song Yu, you've completely disgraced the demon saint. If this matter gets back to North Underworld Mountain, how will you have the face to see others?" Song Yu knew that he could not escape Ji Tianqing's pursuit, so he simply stopped in the night sky. Black light flashed in his hands, and a pitch-black halberd appeared. He pointed it at Ji Tianqing. "Ji Tianqing, you bastard, you've gone too far. You took advantage of my injury to launch a sneak attack. You're despicable and shameless." Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully. "What morality is there to deal with you demons? What a joke. Cut the crap. I'll send you on your way now." As he spoke, he sent out a 1,000-meter-long dragon shadow with his left palm. He waved the sword in his right hand, sending out starlight toward Song Yu. Song Yu gripped the halberd with a serious expression. His body ignited with ice-blue flames, and he also sent out spear shadows to fight with Ji Tianqing. The light from the spells cast by both sides instantly dispelled the darkness in the night sky, illuminating a radius of hundreds of miles. Bang, 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 bang. Chapter 21-22. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing and Song Yu had exchanged a few blows. The earth-shattering sounds of battle alerted the entire Dragonfish Mountain, as well as the millions of demon soldiers. Soon several demon generals led hundreds of demon experts and charged at Ji Tianqing. 6 blood god illusions also turned into black mist and bloody light, quietly approaching him and waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. On the peak of Mount Fish Dragon, tens of thousands of soldiers of the scout camp were also on standby, ready to attack at any time. Even the hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the army camp at the foot of the mountain quickly readied themselves and were on high alert. Countless demon soldiers looked up at the night sky, paying close attention to the battle between Ji Tianqing and Song Yu. Only a few demon generals knew that Song Yu was hiding on Mount Fish Dragon. The millions of demon soldiers did not know. They were filled with doubts and whispered to each other. General Hucha and 5 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon generals led hundreds of elite experts to attack Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had just exchanged a blow with Song Yu and was about to use his sword technique to attack Song Yu again. At this moment, General Hucha and the 5 demon generals seized the opportunity and immediately attacked him from all sides. Demonic dance. Sky-shattering slash. Sky-shattering blood wave. Netherghost soul-slaying sword. With furious roars, the 6 experts brandished their swords and sabers in unison, releasing bloody light, black mist, and phantoms that blotted out the sky. Ji Tianqing's figure was about to be drowned out by the bloody light. At the critical moment, he used his ultimate technique with multitasking. His left palm struck out with 5-colored lightning, while his right hand sent out starry sword light. Bang, 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 bang. 64 rays of starry sword light slashed the bloody light and the phantoms of ghosts in the sky. Immediately after, the 5-colored divine lightning that blotted out the sky came crashing down and struck the demon generals. Kaboom! Only the sound of thunder exploding could be heard, shaking the heavens. A huge ball of 5-colored light exploded, rising into the night sky like a mushroom cloud. The 6 demon generals were sent flying by the explosion. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their faces were also covered in blood. Among them, 2 of the weaker demon generals were struck by the heavenly lightning and turned into charcoal on the spot. Their bodies were completely destroyed. Before their corpses fell to the ground, their souls left their bodies and flew toward the fish dragon mountain. The other 4 demon generals were also seriously injured. They constantly let out low growls and roars of pain. Only General Hucha was the strongest. Even if he was seriously injured, he could still hold on. He lowered his head to look at his badly mutilated chest and abdomen. Ignoring his own injuries, he once again wielded his sword and charged towards Ji Tianqing. At the same time, Ji Tianqing exchanged another move with Songyu and repelled him by 15 kilometers. When General Hucha arrived behind him and the saber light was about to hit him, he turned his hand and pointed his finger. Heaven-piercing finger. He put his index and middle fingers together like a sword, shooting out a dazzling golden light that flashed in the night sky. Crack! With a loud and clear sound, General Hucha's saber light was penetrated by the golden light and shattered. Immediately after, the golden light pierced through his forehead and accurately hit his divine soul. The dark purple soul was torn apart on the spot. General Hucha was killed in an instant. His body was carried by the force of the impact and flew more than 10 miles away before falling down to the wilderness below. After Ji Tianqing killed General Hucha in one move, he charged towards the other demon generals without hesitation. Sword thrust. As the Heaven Barrier sword stabbed forward, a cold light suddenly appeared and flickered in the night sky. In the next moment, a dazzling brilliance exploded in the head of a demon general. That round head of his exploded into a rain of blood on the spot, and his soul also collapsed and shattered. Ji Tianqing waved the barrier of heaven again and again, stabbing out a few times as fast as lightning. Cold sword glints tore through the night sky, striking those demon generals who were fleeing in panic, including the 2 demon generals whose bodies had been destroyed and only had their souls left. They were shattered on the spot by the sword light. Just like that, 6 elite demon generals were killed by Ji Tianqing in less than 2 breaths. Songyu had just rushed over and wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Seeing the 6 demon generals being blasted to smithereens with his own eyes, he was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. His body ignited with bloody flames that soared into the sky. Ji Tianqing, even if I die here, I will tear you to pieces. As he roared, he waved his black halberd with all his might. In an instant he stabbed out hundreds of bloody and black light spear blades that enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing could only wave his sword to block and defeat the bloody light and spear blades that filled the sky. However, just as he resolved Songyu's attack, a cold aura of death suddenly attacked from behind. The 2 blood gods clones turned into bloody swords that were 10 feet long and stabbed at the back of Sumo's head and neck. The 2 blood gods clones had been lurking nearby for a long time before they seized this rare opportunity. In order to kill Sumo in one hit, they had personally formed the bloody swords to explode with the most powerful attack. Ji Tianqing could not block or dodge in time, and was about to be stabbed by the 2 bloody swords. At this critical moment, his spiritual soul was condensed to the extreme and his spiritual power was also unleashed to the extreme. He entered a state of extreme focus and gave it his all. At that moment, he could clearly feel that the martial arts bottleneck had begun to loosen. He had already shown signs of breaking through to the martial sage realm. Celestial dragon body. Without hesitation, he lifted his head and roared. His body lit up with a golden light that soared into the sky. Roar! The golden light that soared into the sky condensed into a huge golden dragon shadow. It lifted its head and let out a dragon roar that shook the clouds. Its power was shocking. Ji Tianqing's body suddenly expanded, and he turned into a 10 feet tall golden armored giant. His muscles bulged and he looked extremely majestic. His body was covered with golden dragon scales, and he exuded a violent and overbearing aura. He was like a golden armored war god that had descended. Bam bam! The 2 blood gods clones that had turned into bloody swords accurately hit Sumo's legs and back. In the deafening sound, the golden light exploded and the bloody sword shattered into pieces, splattering in all directions. Ji Tianqing's body shook violently and he was thrown 1,000 feet away by the terrifying impact. However, other than that, he did not suffer any substantial injuries. The dragon scales on his legs and back were still intact, and there was not even a drop of blood. There were only 2 shallow scratches. The powerful defense of the celestial dragon body was undoubtedly displayed at that moment. On the other hand, the 2 blood gods clones were not only unable to break through Ji Tianqing's defense, but their bodies were also shattered. Fortunately, they were blood gods clones that were almost immortal. Even if they were shattered into pieces, they could quickly be pieced back together. Such a shocking scene caused numerous demon tribe members to turn pale with fright. They were shocked and terrified to the extreme. Even Song Yu's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with intense shock and disbelief. How can this be? The full force attack of the 2 blood gods did not even break through his defense. Chapter 21-23. After using the celestial dragon tyrant body, Ji Tianqing's defense and strength reached the peak. He was like an invincible god of war, shuttling through the sky invincible. Hundreds of demon clan experts formed a battle formation and jointly released a destructive blood dragon and light blade storm. However, he rushed over arrogantly, waving his huge fists and punching out dozens of mountain-sized fist shadows. Bang! 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 A burst of brilliance flashed and a loud noise shook the sky. All of the attacks collapsed and turned into violent shockwaves that spread out in all directions. Ji Tianqing passed through the light fragments unscathed and rushed to the front of the hundreds of demon clan experts. Die! He let out a low growl in a sinister tone. His palms repeatedly shot out divine star fire, which blasted into the battle formation. Another series of explosions rang out, and the hundreds of demon race experts were smashed to pieces on the spot. They turned into pieces of flesh and blood that rained down from the sky. Not a single person had survived. Such a terrifying scene made every demon clan expert feel a chill down their spines. However, Ji Tianqing was in the mood to kill. His figure flashed through the bloody rain and rushed to the front of a group of demon clan experts. Star-shattering fist. He instantly punched out dozens of silver fist lights and killed dozens of demon clan experts. No one could block his move. As long as they were hit, they would die without a doubt. His figure kept flashing in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he killed hundreds of demon clan experts. Song Yu finally came to his senses and rushed up in rage. Ji Tianqing, don't be so arrogant. He roared and waved the black demon war halberd with all his strength, thrusting out spear blades that filled the sky and creating a shocking storm. This time he made up his mind. Even if he had to endure his injuries, he would attack Ji Tianqing with all his strength and not give him a chance to breathe. Anyway, this was Mount Fish Dragon and there were millions of troops here. As long as he delayed Ji Tianqing, the soldiers would activate the formation and join forces to form a joint attack formation to help him deal with Ji Tianqing. I don't believe that I can't kill you with the power of millions of soldiers and me? In this world, apart from the martial god, there is absolutely no one who can stop him. If it had been anyone else, even if they were a rank 8 or 9 martial sage, they would not have been able to withstand it. However, Ji Tianqing was an anomaly, an evildoer and a monster. He could not be judged by common sense. Song Yu's plans and ideas were destined to fail. 7-star sword, broken moon sword, sun-shattering sword, heavenly dragon world slash. Ji Tianqing constantly executed his ultimate skills and secret techniques, attacking Song Yu madly, beating him back repeatedly. Not far away, 8 Tribulation Realm demon generals and the Blood God's son led more than 300 demon clan masters to form the 6 Saint Demon Battle Formation. They joined forces to release an earth-shattering spell attack, which poured down on Ji Tianqing like a flood. Further away in the night sky, there were more than 10,000 warriors from the scout camp. They used Dharma treasure bows and charms to release a rain of arrows, which covered the sky and the sun. They continuously attacked Ji Tianqing. No one expected to kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. They only hoped to restrain him and injure him to create an opportunity for Song Yu. Ji Tianqing suddenly felt the pressure on him increase. He was like a small boat in a stormy sea that could capsize at any time and be drowned by the sea. The crisis of life and death forced his spiritual soul, willpower, and mind to the extreme. The vast dharmic powers in his body were also activated to the extreme. Even the 360 meridians in his body, and the 108,000 pores were activated, rapidly absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the power of the stars. This kind of profound state was precisely the limit that martial artists yearned for even in their dreams. If he wanted to advance to the martial sage realm, he had to break through his own limits. 10 breaths, 30 breaths, 50 breaths. Very quickly 100 breaths passed. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the barrier and bottleneck of the martial sage realm was gradually disappearing with the passage of time. On the surface, he was surrounded by danger and his life was hanging by a thread. He could die at any time. However, in reality he was laughing heartily in his heart. He was very satisfied and looked forward to it. Ha ha ha. Just as I expected, I am facing off against Song Yu and the many demon tribesmen alone. I can only unleash all my potential at the moment of life and death. Song Yu, this is indeed the opportunity for me to break through to the martial sage realm. Hold on for a while longer, and I will be able to break through soon. This thought flashed across his mind. He gave it his all and unleashed his potential at all costs in order to reach the limit. The pressure on Song Yu instantly increased and he retreated pathetically. Countless wounds appeared on his body and demon blood spurted out. The surrounding demon generals and hundreds of experts also felt the pressure increase. Everyone gritted their teeth and unleashed their strongest power, attacking Ji Tianqing with all their might. Such an intense battle caused chaos within a 100-mile radius. The dazzling radiance of dermic powers lit up the entire Dragonfish Mountain, making it as bright as day for 100 miles. In the demon army camp at the foot of the mountain, hundreds of thousands of people looked up at the night sky in a daze. The 600,000 human tribesmen who were lying in ambush around the camp felt their hearts in their throats as they broke out in cold sweat for Ji Tianqing. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianqing maintained his peak state for a quarter of an hour. His mind and soul felt deeply fatigued and exhausted. His consciousness also showed a brief moment of dizziness. However, Song Yu's situation was even worse. Song Yu had already been hit by more than 30 blows. His chest alone had been hit 8 times. It was a bloody mess and demon blood kept flowing out. His injuries were too severe and he could not take it anymore. He could only use his trump card again. 9 Nether Demon Wolf Transformation. He roared to the sky in grief and indignation as his body burned with a bloody flame. In the next moment, his body turned into a cloud of black mist and scattered in the night sky. A pitch-black demon wolf that was thousands of feet long and as huge as a mountain appeared. Every time Song Yu used the 9 Nether Demon Wolf transformation, he would burn his blood soul and sacrifice 100 years of cultivation, causing his strength to drop greatly. He had only used it once before and had not been able to kill Ji Tianqing. Instead, he had been severely injured and had fled. Now that he had not recovered from his injuries, he would definitely suffer an even more terrifying backlash if he forcefully used this technique again. Even the foundation of his Devil Dao could very well be destroyed because of this. By then, even if he could kill Ji Tianqing, he would be reduced to a useless demon saint and would never be able to become stronger again. That was why he was so indignant. However, Song Yu did not expect that just as he was filled with despair and used the 9 Nether Demon Wolf transformation, Ji Tianqing would also change. He also stopped attacking and actually raised his head to look at the sky. He opened his wide arms and shouted in a voice that was as loud as a bell. "Break!" This cold shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding in the night sky and spreading over a radius of 800 miles, causing the entire Dragonfish Mountain to tremble. In the next instant, infinite golden light surged out of his body and formed a pillar of light that shot into the sky. It burned with a golden flame that covered the sky. Chapter 21-24. The sudden change shocked everyone. Ji Tianqing, who was 30 meters tall and looked like a god of war in golden armor, opened his arms to embrace the sky and welcomed the holy aura. The golden light behind him soared into the sky, and the golden light in the sky shone brightly. It condensed into 9 incomparably huge divine dragons, and they roared with their heads held high. Dazzling 5-colored rays of light appeared and covered the sky, extending to the end of the horizon. Such an earth-shattering scene could be seen clearly from 1,000,000 miles away. Even the living beings in the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, which spanned hundreds of millions of miles, could see it. This was definitely not a martial artist's technique, but a heaven and earth vision. Only the mighty power of heaven and earth could produce such a shocking scene. Song Yu, who had transformed into the nine-nether demon wolf, stared at Ji Tianqing with his 3 eyes and was stunned. He was stunned for a moment before he realized what had happened and roared. You actually broke through? This heaven and earth vision only appears when one breaks through to the martial sage realm. No, didn't you reach the martial sage realm long ago? How could you only break through to the martial sage realm now? Song Yu was completely dumbfounded. He was so shocked that his body stiffened and his mind went blank. He had always thought that Ji Tianqing was a martial sage and was one of the best among the martial sages. Otherwise, how could Ji Tianqing possibly defeat him and beat him up so miserably? However, the heaven and earth vision in front of him was very real and the heaven way would not be wrong. He then realized that Ji Tianqing had not broken through to the martial sage realm. However, how could Ji Tianqing, who was at the 9th stage of the tribulation stage, defeat him, a 7th stage demon sage? This was simply the most ridiculous thing in the world. Song Yu refused to believe it and could not accept this outcome. A few demon generals, hundreds of demon clan experts, and millions of demon clan soldiers were all stunned. All the demon clan soldiers on Dragonfish Mountain were petrified. They stared blankly at the sky and were mesmerized by the dazzling heaven and earth vision. Not only that, the 600,000 human clan soldiers who were lying in ambush outside the demon clan camp were also in an uproar. In the beginning, many people did not know what the heaven and earth vision represented. However, the 6 generals were very clear that it was the heaven and earth vision when one broke through to the martial sage realm. After they exclaimed, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers spread the news and they finally understood the truth. It turned out that Martial Ji, who they admired and was invincible martial sage realm, had just broken through to the martial sage realm. This news was like a bolt out of the blue and earth vision and heaven and earth. After a long while, the generals came back to their senses. Heaven and earth of the heaven and earth of the heaven and earth vision of the heavens. This is unbelievable. Marshal of the heavens of the tribulation heavens. But General Ji killed millions of devil soldiers and several devil saints. How did he do it? There's absolutely no reasonable explanation other than the existence of a deity. Heaven, heaven. Heaven, heaven, and heaven, earth, earth. Heaven. Of the of heaven, heaven. Earth, heaven, heaven of the heaven. This means that Martial Ji is able to attract 9 heavenly thunders every time he transcends a tribulation. He is a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Heaven. When other martial sages break through to the heaven and earth vision, there would only be 6 or 7 spiritual beasts or stars. There would not be any divine beasts. Now that Ji Shui has broken through to the martial sage realm, there are 9 divine dragons. Divine dragons are the noblest divine beasts in the world. This means that Marshal of Heaven and Earth's talent and future are beyond imagination. Ha ha ha. The heaven and earth vision of Ji Shui breaking through to the martial sage realm is comparable to that of the 3 great divine masters breaking through to the martial god realm. I bet that half of the people in the mainland will know about this by tomorrow morning. Just as the people were discussing, the light pillar in the night sky slowly retreated back into Ji Tianqing's body. The divine aura that descended from the heavens was also stored in his body, refined and absorbed by him. His body and spiritual soul had been baptized by the heaven and earth's divine force, and had been completely reborn. From today onwards, he had surpassed the limits of a mortal and a martial artist. He had 1 foot in the door of the divine path. In terms of martial arts, he was already at the pinnacle, reaching the pinnacle. Next, he would cultivate the divine path. It was a superpower that could control everything in the universe. This was a whole new realm. If it were anyone else, breaking through to the martial sage realm would mean stepping into a new realm. There would be many discomfort and confusion. They would need some time to adapt and stabilize their martial way foundation. However, for Ji Tianqing, the most familiar feeling once again filled his body. All the 5 elements in heaven and earth forces within a 10,000-mile radius were under his command and control. Even the starlight in the heavens would sprinkle down formless star forces and naturally enter his body. He slowly opened his eyes, and a dazzling light flashed in his deep, dark eyes. A sacred and majestic aura exploded from his body and spread out for a 1,000-mile radius. Martial Sage Realm, I am back. He looked up at the starry sky and muttered with a complicated expression. Not far away, Song Yu and the many demon clan experts revealed strange expressions. Everyone could clearly feel that after Ji Tianqing had broken through to the martial sage realm, he seemed to have changed into a different person. His aura was sacred and majestic, cold and dignified. He was like a divine spirit that looked down on all living beings. It was as if he had become one with the heavens and earth. There was no aura at all and no one could detect his background. However, he was omnipresent. If one looked at him with their naked eyes, they would be able to see him. However, if one closed their eyes and used their spiritual senses to detect him, they would not be able to detect him. He was clearly just one person. However, when one looked at him, it was as if they were looking at mountains and rivers. That strange and mysterious feeling could not be described with words. Song Yu's expression changed. Deep fear and dread surged in his eyes and he faintly felt like retreating. However, the surrounding demon generals and demon clan experts did not know how powerful he was. They were not knowledgeable and did not know what Ji Tianqing's transformation meant. The supreme being who had once ruled over the 9 heavens had returned. Although he had only returned to the martial sage realm, he had already surpassed the ordinary and stepped into the divine path. This meant that he could finally use all his superpowers and use the essence of the Kenshin way. What are you all waiting for? Quickly kill him. That's right. He has just broken through and his realm is not stable yet. Now is the best time. 2 angry shouts came from the crowd. 2 demon generals could not wait any longer and waved their swords and sabers as they charged toward Ji Tianqing. The remaining demon generals, Blood God's son, and the hundreds of demon clan experts all seemed to have awakened from a dream. They all executed a secret combination attack and besieged Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, who had been looking up at the sky, suddenly turned his head to look at the crowd. A cold light flashed in his cold eyes. You are courting death. That cold and indifferent gaze was like a divine spirit looking down on ants. Chapter 21-25. With a wave of his sleeve, the starlight that blotted out the sky swept over. Whoosh! The next moment, several demon generals, Blood God's sons, and more than 200 demon race experts were all drowned in the dazzling starlight. The night sky was dazzling and dazzling. It was like a bright moon had fallen to the earth, illuminating thousands of miles around. The silver starlight flashed and quickly dissipated. The night sky returned to darkness, but the demon generals, Blood God's sons, and demon race experts had all disappeared. No one knew where they had gone or whether they were alive or dead. Only the stronger demons noticed that the night sky was filled with black ash that dissipated with the wind. Without a doubt, those demon generals, Blood God's sons, and elite experts had all been turned to dust. Ji Tianqing had only casually waved his sleeve and killed hundreds of experts and experts. Such powerful strength and miraculous means made everyone present dumbfounded. Song Yu's expression changed dramatically, and his eyes were filled with shock and fear. Previously, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart, but now even his last hope of victory had been extinguished. He had to accept reality. Not only was he no match for Ji Tianqing, but even with the addition of 1 million demon race soldiers, it was impossible for them to kill Ji Tianqing. This person was already invincible like a god. Thinking of this, Song Yu shouted hoarsely and murderously, "Everyone listen to my order. Kill Ji Tianqing at all costs. Warriors of my race, even if we bleed to the last drop of blood, we can't let him leave alive." Song Yu's voice was sonorous and forceful, full of iron and blood. Countless demon race soldiers, whose morale had been completely depleted, were stimulated at this moment. They all let out deafening roars and battle cries as they charged toward Ji Tianqing in the night sky. Kill. Be loyal to the ancestor until death. Everyone, let's go together. Even if we are smashed to pieces, let his blood run dry and his soul wither. No one is allowed to take a step back. Even if we die, we can't disgrace our race. At least 100,000 demon race soldiers surged out of Fish Dragon Mountain. Like a pitch-black tide, they swept toward Ji Tianqing. After Song Yu gave the order, he quietly concealed himself and flew north without a sound. Half a month ago, Northern Underworld Mountain had sent news. The ancestor demon god had learned of the situation in the north and intended for the demon race army to retreat to northern underworld mountain. Back then, Song Yu had not received the exact order, so he could not withdraw his troops on his own. He could only hide in Fish Dragon Mountain to heal his wounds. But now he could no longer care so much. He would rather sacrifice the million-strong army of the Fish Dragon Mountain to stall Ji Tianxing and create a chance for him to escape. However, Song Yu underestimated Ji Tianxing in the end. Song Yu of the demon race's demon race. As such, when the 100,000 devilish soldiers charged toward him, he made a hand seal with both hands and let loose a low cry with a cold expression. As his voice fell, the night sky that was as dark as ink suddenly became deathly still, as if a mirror had been frozen. The space within a radius of 1,000 kilometers seemed to have been sealed in ice. The movements of the 100,000 demon race soldiers became extremely slow, like they had been slowed down 100 times. Thousands of cracks appeared in the pitch-black night sky. Dazzling starlight shone from within. Swish, 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 swish. In the next moment, over 9,000 huge swords condensed from starlight pierced through the cracks and rained down on the demon race army. This was one of Kenshin's ultimate sword techniques, sword rain. The starlight swords formed from the power of stars in outer space gathered like rain. Such a wondrous technique was the true ultimate technique of Kenshin. As the sword rain rained down, the 100,000 demon race soldiers were immediately enveloped by sword shadows. Body after body was sliced apart by the sword light. They were minced into pieces of flesh and blood that rained down. Screams and howls of rage erupted in the night sky, converging into a terrifying torrent of sound waves that reverberated endlessly. Ji Tianxing was nowhere to be seen. He did not need to look to know that the fate of the 100,000 demon race soldiers was certain death. Whoosh! He took 5 steps as if he was taking a leisurely stroll, and he flew 150 kilometers away as if he had teleported, catching up to Song Yu. Song Yu suddenly sensed danger approaching. His back was icy cold, and the aura of death emerged from the depths of his soul. For the first time in his life, he felt that he was so close to death. Without hesitation, he used a teleportation secret technique. He wanted to teleport 800 kilometers away from Mount Fish Dragon. Whoosh! With a flash of black light, his 1,000-foot-tall demon wolf body became illusory and blurry. He was about to vanish from the spot. He was about to escape from Ji Tianxing's eyes. However, a horrifying scene appeared. Just as Song Yu was about to teleport away, Ji Tianxing suddenly reached out with his right hand and grabbed at him. Bam! A huge dark golden dragon claw instantly grabbed Song Yu and held him firmly. He was about to enter the alternate space when the dark golden dragon claw violently pulled him out. Song Yu was instantly horrified. His 3 eyes opened wide while unparalleled terror surged out from the bottom of his heart. Damn it! What secret technique is this? How can it forcefully interrupt my teleportation? Ji Tianxing, this bastard. Where did he come from? He is definitely not a newly advanced martial sage. Song Yu did not believe that Ji Tianxing had just broken through to the martial sage realm. Such a tyrannical and mysterious technique was definitely not something an ordinary martial sage could perform. Just as this thought flashed through Song Yu's mind, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his body as if it was being torn apart. He then realized that the dark golden dragon claw had suddenly tightened and was ruthlessly crushing him. The 1,000-foot-long body of the demonic wolf was extremely fragile in front of the dark golden dragon claw. Immediately, a cracking sound could be heard as dense cracks appeared on the wolf's body. The heart-wrenching pain caused Song Yu to cry out in pain as he struggled with all his might. Ah! Ji Tianxing, you bastard! I will tear you apart! Song Yu recklessly exploded with power. His body suddenly shrunk by 10 times before it violently expanded. Bam! There was a muffled sound as the dark golden dragon claw was blown to pieces and turned into numerous golden light fragments that dissipated. Song Yu had finally escaped from Ji Tianxing's grasp. However, his body was covered in blood and he looked extremely miserable. His wings and legs had been crushed and they drooped weakly on his body. Broken demon bones could be seen in his wounds. His body was covered in cracks and wounds, and he looked like a broken porcelain bowl. Dark purple demon blood gushed out like a fountain and dyed his body dark purple. Song Yu retreated 20 miles away and glared at Ji Tianqing with hatred. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, stop! I want to negotiate with you." Chapter 21-26. Seeing Ji Tianqing's decisive refusal, Song Yu's heart burned with worry. He said anxiously, "Ji Tianqing, I admit that you are very strong, but you are alone. How can you protect all the people of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom? Even if you can kill me, there are still more than 3 million soldiers outside the Fish Dragon Mountain and Skywolf Pass. Once I die, they will attack the Luoshui Divine Kingdom without a care. They will slaughter at least a few million people. Moreover, countless blood sovereigns and elite experts will sneak into the Luoshui Divine Kingdom and massacre the city. Even if I die, millions of people will die with me." Song Yu spoke very quickly, and his tone was also very firm, revealing an unquestionable tone. "However, if you can spare my life and stop the war, I will immediately order the army to retreat. All the demons on the northern battlefront will retreat to North Underworld Mountain as quickly as possible. Isn't this the result that the Luoshui Divine Kingdom wants? Moreover, the millions of people of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom won't have to die. Ji Tianqing, this deal is beneficial to you. I hope you can seize the opportunity." After speaking his thoughts, Song Yu reminded Ji Tianqing in a serious tone, afraid that he would not consider it seriously. Ji Tianqing glanced at him with a disdainful sneer on his cold face. He said indifferently at first glance, "What you said seems to make sense." Song Yu was overjoyed and asked expectantly, "So you agree?" "No." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said coldly, "I refuse. What I want is not only the retreat of the demon army and the resolution of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom's crisis. I want all the demons who invade the Luoshui Divine Kingdom to die here and be unable to return to North Underworld Mountain. All the demons, including you, must die." Ji Tianqing's tone was equally domineering and full of confidence. Song Yu's body stiffened, and his 3 eyes widened with grief and indignation. "Ji Tianqing, you are too arrogant. Do you really think you are a god? You're so overbearing. One day, you'll fall in the hands of my devil race and suffer the pain of being hacked into pieces." Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and said in a calm voice, "You won't be able to see whether I will fall into the hands of the demon race. After all, you're going to die soon. Moreover, you're going to be smashed into pieces and die without a complete corpse." After he finished speaking, he did not waste any more words with Song Yu. His right hand pointed at the sky as he shouted expressionlessly, "Hidden swords in the void, myriad swords return to origin." As his voice fell, tens of thousands of starlight spots suddenly lit up high in the night sky. Each of the light spots was a giant sword of starlight that was hundreds of meters long. They fell like shooting stars. Swish! Swish! Tens of thousands of stellar swords stabbed down at the same time, firmly locking onto Song Yu's aura, making it impossible for him to dodge. Instantly, the night sky within a radius of several thousand miles was illuminated by the silver starlight. Song Yu was under great pressure. His body trembled and the wounds all over his body ruptured at an accelerated rate. However, he did his best to hold on and roared in grief and indignation, "Ji Tianqing, even if I die, I won't let you have it easy." As he roared, he suddenly opened the third eye on his chest, releasing an endless amount of black light. The extremely pure black light condensed into a pillar of light that was hundreds of meters long. It carried a mysterious and cold power as it blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Song Yu had used this secret art before. Ji Tianqing also knew that the black pillar of light was the power of annihilation. However, he was fearless. His expression and eyes did not show any signs of retreating or worry. He raised his hand and punched without hesitation. Star-shattering fist. A golden fist the size of a mountain slammed towards the pillar of annihilation with destructive power. Boom! The two collided with a deafening sound that shook the world for thousands of miles. Ripples appeared in the night sky. The ground trembled violently and fissures appeared. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions along with countless fragments of golden light. The golden fist was shattered, but the pillar of annihilation was also completely destroyed. Song Yu's ultimate trump card had been neutralized by Ji Tianqing just like that. He was filled with despair and turned to flee. However, tens of thousands of starlight swords had already arrived. Bam 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 bam. In an instant, hundreds of starlight swords stabbed into his body, creating a series of loud booms. The 3,000-meter-long demon wolf's body was instantly riddled with holes. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The previously ferocious and terrifying demonic wolf's body was immediately reduced to a bloody mess. Song Yu screamed in pain and desperately swung his claws to shatter the starlight swords. He also used all his strength to release demonic power and condense a black shield to protect himself. Unfortunately, under the bombardment of tens of thousands of swords, the black shield quickly dissipated. In less than 10 breaths, Song Yu's demon wolf body was shattered by the tens of thousands of starlight swords and scattered into the night sky. At the same time, thousands of starlight swords shattered and turned into starlight that scattered into the night sky. Whoosh! A dark purple wolf-shaped divine soul charged out of the rain of blood. Burning with dark red flames, it sped towards the north. Even though Song Yu's physical body was destroyed and only his divine soul was left, he still did not give up. However, he still didn't give up on escaping. He used a secret technique at all costs and flashed through the night sky. Ji Tianqing stared coldly at the divine soul. He raised his right hand unhurriedly and formed a few hand seals with his hands. Condense! Following his cold shout, the scattered starlight in the night sky immediately condensed into a giant sword that was thousands of feet long, like a white rainbow. Kill! Ji Tianqing shouted again and pointed at the fleeing Song Yu with his right hand. The 1,000-foot-long starlight sword immediately turned into a ray of silver light and began its pursuit. The starlight sword was so fast that it even left behind a dazzling trail of flames. In just 2 short breaths, the starlight sword had crossed 500 kilometers and viciously struck Song Yu's divine soul. Bang! With a deafening sound, the wolf-shaped divine soul collapsed on the spot, exploding into dozens of pieces that scattered into the night sky. A martial saint expert, the infamous second demon Saint Song Yu, had died just like that. Even Ji Tianqing was rather surprised and could not help but frown. The demon race has always been cunning and treacherous. They will not die so easily. Did Song Yu not have a backup plan, such as cultivating the celestial demon jade seed technique or some ultimate life-saving technique? Earlier he had thought that killing Song Yu would take some effort and waste some time. He had not imagined that it would be so easy. He had not even used his trump card. However, on second thought, Song Yu had just been heavily injured and had not recovered from his injuries. He only had around 70% of his strength. It was inevitable that he would be killed. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing flew to the place where the divine soul fragments were scattered. He waved his hand and sent out several rays of golden light, picking up the fragments. Then he used the divine power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the divine soul fragments. Chapter 21-27. Ji Tianqing had successfully broken through to the martial sage realm, and he had killed Song Yu. He had achieved all his goals in this battle. Hence, he turned and flew toward Fish Dragon Mountain. Now, he only had one goal left, and that was to destroy the million-strong demon army at Fish Dragon Mountain. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing strode across the night sky and returned to the sky above Fish Dragon Mountain in 10 breaths. Although the 600,000-strong human tribe soldiers were still lying in ambush outside the camp, without Ji Tianqing's orders, they wouldn't attack without permission. However, the entire Fish Dragon Mountain was in chaos. The commander-in-chief, Song Yu, was dead. More than a dozen demon generals and blood god's sons had also been killed. Even the 100,000 demon tribe soldiers who had attacked Ji Tianqing had died under the starry sword rain, and were crushed into powder. As the starry sword rain poured down, the area within a radius of a few hundred miles was affected. Even though Fish Dragon Mountain had a defensive array, it was riddled with holes by the starry sword rain and shattered into pieces. It was no longer there. Fish Dragon Mountain, which was 3,000 feet tall, had been reduced to ruins by the starry sword rain. More than half of the majestic mountain had collapsed and countless rocks were scattered in all directions, crashing into the demon tribe camp. At least tens of thousands of demon tribe soldiers had died when Fish Dragon Mountain collapsed. The demon tribe camp had been reduced to a mess. Hundreds of thousands of demon tribe soldiers ran around in a panic, shouting anxiously and helplessly. Most of the soldiers were facing a situation where they couldn't find their general and couldn't hear his orders. Only a small number of demon tribe soldiers who were in charge of logistics and fortifications were busy clearing the ruins and rescuing the injured demon tribe soldiers. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky and looked down at the situation below. He slowly lifted his hand and released a ray of golden light. Swoosh! The golden light shot up into the sky and formed a golden divine dragon in the sky. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it roared. Roar! In an instant, the area within a radius of 1,000 miles was illuminated by the golden light. A loud dragon roar reverberated in all directions. This was the signal to attack. The human tribe soldiers who had been lying in ambush around the demon tribe camp could not suppress their desire to fight. Once they saw the signal to attack, a loud bugle horn sounded in the army. Countless soldiers shouted excitedly, "Kill! Charge into the demon race's camp and kill them all! Warriors of the Scarlet Sun Empire, it's time to make a name for yourself. Make a name for yourself tonight." Along with the battle cries, the 600,000-strong human army surged toward the Fish Dragon Mountain camp from all directions like a tide. The scouts of the devil race had long discovered the existence of the human army. As early as when Ji Tianqing and Song Yu were fighting a great battle, there were already several 100,000 fiend army guarding the surroundings of the camp, preventing the human army from launching a sneak attack. However, the power of Ji Tianqing and Song Yu's battle was too great. This was especially true for the sword rain, which brought about a devastating disaster to Mount Fish Dragon. The entire devil army camp was in chaos. Naturally, no one cared about defense. It was only when the human race army began to charge that the demon race soldiers finally reacted. They hurriedly took out their weapons and ran around the camp to defend. If they had the protection of a saint-level defensive formation, the devil race army would still have the power to fight. Unfortunately, the defensive formation had long been destroyed. Before long, the human race army successfully passed through the broken formation and charged into the camp. The two armies clashed and immediately engaged in a bitter and bloody battle. However, the devil race army was panicking. Their morale was low and everyone was anxious. However, the human race army was full of vigor and excitement. The soldiers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. The result of the battle between the two sides could be imagined. Clang! 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 Boom! 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 The clashing of weapons, the explosions of Dharma arts and secret techniques, and the clashing of experts converged into a deafening sound wave that reverberated endlessly in the night sky. Ji Tianqing stood high in the sky, looking down indifferently. There was neither sorrow nor joy on his face. Seeing the human soldiers charging bravely but still suffering a large number of casualties, he could not help but frown. Even though the devil race did not have a commander and their morale was very low, they did not lose their ability to fight. In this desperate situation, the devil race became even more ferocious. They would rather fight like caged beasts than easily retreat. The human race army had to kill 10,000 devil race soldiers, which meant 3,000 to 4,000 casualties. This was not good news. Thus, Ji Tianqing had to act personally to speed up the slaughter of the devil race army. 5-colored divine lightning. Ji Tianqing waved his left hand, and his sleeves fluttered, sending down pillars of lightning that filled the sky. Boom! 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 Hundreds of 5-colored pillars of lightning landed in the midst of the devil race army with a deafening boom. Instantly, the dilapidated Fish Dragon Mountain was completely shattered by the heavenly lightning, collapsing into a large expanse of scorched earth and ruins. Tens of thousands of devil race soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly lightning, turning into charcoal and dust that scattered among the ruins. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianqing formed a spell with his right hand, directing the power of the stars and heavenly fire in the 9 heavens to bombard the devil race army. Immediately, hundreds of dazzling meteors, accompanied by crimson heavenly fire, rained down from the sky. Whoosh! Boom! 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 Everything within a 200-mile radius was turned into a sea of fire. The meteors blasted countless holes in the ground, sending smoke and dust into the air. The ruins of the collapsed Fish Dragon Mountain were blasted away on the spot. Another 300,000 Devil Race soldiers were burned to ashes by the sea of fire, dying without a complete corpse. The Devil Race army was completely scared out of their wits. Their anger and murderous intent had all dissipated. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky like a deity. Every move he made could unleash a calamity that could destroy the world. How could they continue fighting? If they delayed any longer, Ji Tianqing could probably use a few more moves to destroy everything within a 1,000-mile radius. By then, even 3 or 5 million Devil Race soldiers would not be enough for him to slaughter, let alone 1 million. This guy was no longer human. He was a god. The most terrifying killing god. Soon, the Devil Race army began to crumble. They fled toward the north in a panic. The pressure on the human army was greatly reduced. They immediately cheered excitedly and chased after the Devil Race soldiers. Ji Tianqing saw that the two armies were mixed up, and it was no longer suitable for him to release powerful moves, so he stopped. After all, only about 400,000 Devil Race soldiers were left after his massacre, and they were all remnants of defeated soldiers. Leaving the 600,000 human soldiers to chase after the Devil Race soldiers would definitely result in a complete victory. He stood in the night sky with his hands behind his back, silently watching the battlefield and waiting for the battle to end. After a full 2 hours, the battle finally came to an end. Another 300,000 Devil Race soldiers were killed by the human army. The entire camp of the Devil Race was razed to the ground and completely destroyed. Only 80,000 Devil Race soldiers were left. They scattered into dozens of small groups and fled into the mountains in the north. Ji Tianqing sent out 2 generals, each leading 50,000 soldiers to chase after the Devil Race soldiers. The remaining human army remained on the battlefield. Not only did they have to clean up the battlefield, but they also had to treat the wounded soldiers. After they were done, they could return to the Starfall Valley. This would take another 2 hours. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered to wait, so he left this matter to the 4 generals. Chapter 21-28. After leaving the battlefield, Ji Tianqing flew in the night sky as he thought about his next plan. The barracks of Mount Fish Dragon had been destroyed and Song Yu had been killed by him. The commander-in-chief of the northern region was dead, and there was no demon sage to guard the place. Now there were only 2 barracks and a few forts outside Fallen Stars Valley and 2 million demon tribe troops. There were still 3 million demon tribe troops in the barracks and forts outside Sirius Pass. As long as he killed the 5 million demon tribe troops, the war in the northern region would be over. Even if there were some remaining demon tribe troops, they would not be able to pose much of a threat. Unknowingly, Ji Tianqing was 2,000 miles away from Mount Fish Dragon. It was the darkest moment of the day, just before dawn. He was flying over a vast mountain range and was still thinking about something. Suddenly, a crisp and pleasant female voice rang in the night sky. "Ho ho, the invincible commander-in-chief Ji has fallen into such a sorry state?" The sudden voice interrupted Ji Tianqing's thoughts. He immediately stopped and raised his eyebrows as he looked at the night sky in front of him. Thousands of meters away in the night sky, there was a woman in a golden dress who was indescribably beautiful. The woman was tall and beautiful. Her temperament was noble and coquettish, and she was full of a captivating aura. She stood in the night sky gracefully and the phoenix crown on her head shone brightly. The long golden dress hung behind her and swayed gently in the night wind, making her look ethereal. Unfortunately, she looked at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile and her words were sarcastic. Ji Tianqing took a look at her and frowned. A look of astonishment flashed across his eyes. This woman, why does she look so familiar? Her spiritual soul aura is also familiar? Is she from the Cha Nu tribe? Martial Sage realm? Could it be her? These thoughts flashed across Ji Tianqing's mind. In just a breath he recognized the woman. She was the leader of the Cha Nu tribe, Empress Tan Tai. However, even though Ji Tianqing's heart wavered, he remained calm on the surface and did not reveal any abnormalities. He looked at Empress Tan Tai indifferently and said coldly, "Who are you? Why are you blocking my way?" Empress Tan Tai looked at him meaningfully for a moment, then pretended to be charming and said with a smile, "This empress is a citizen of the Scarlet Sun Empire. I wanted to welcome Marshal Ji's triumphant return. Who would have thought that Grand Marshal Ji would be so severely injured and end up in such a sorry state?" He even abandoned hundreds of thousands of soldiers and fled back alone. Aya, it's really hard to believe that the invincible Marshal Ji actually has a time when he has to flee? Empress Tantai pretended to be sorry, but her expression and tone were full of undisguised complacency and ridicule. Ji Tianqing was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to answer. He lowered his head and looked at himself. Only then did he come to a realization. It turned out that during the previous battle, his white robe was stained with blood and had long turned purplish black. He looked rather miserable. I see, he said in his heart, basically guessing the purpose of Empress Tantai's visit. But he did not explain. He looked at Empress Tantai calmly and asked indifferently, "So you deliberately waited for me here to laugh at me, or to kill me?" Empress Tantai pretended to be stunned for a moment, looked at him with puzzlement and asked affectionately, "Why would Grand Marshal Ji think of this Empress as that kind of person? This Empress can't wait to love you, how can I kill you?" Hearing the words "love you," Ji Tianqing instinctively felt disgusted and frowned with a cold face. "Please conduct yourself with dignity, Bun Shui and you don't know each other." "Ah!" Empress Tantai exclaimed in surprise and asked incredulously, "Grand Marshal Ji, do you really not remember this Empress? 1,000 years ago, this Empress was your most beloved woman. At that time you held this Empress in the palm of your hand and cared for me in every way possible. You couldn't wait to hold this Empress in your mouth." Empress Tantai held her chest with both hands with a look of heartache. Her clear eyes were full of mist, and she looked like she was about to cry. Ji Tianqing frowned and almost couldn't help but curse her for being shameless. However, he guessed Empress Tantai's intention and could only remain calm and restrained. He shook his head expressionlessly and said, "You've got the wrong person. Bun Shui is not yet 30 years old. For a woman like you who has lived for more than 1,000 years, Bun Shui can't have emotional entanglements with you. Bun Shui's taste is not that heavy." Empress Tantai was humiliated by him, but she was not angry. Instead, she felt even more wronged. 2 lines of crystal clear tears burst out of her eyes and rolled down her white cheeks. "Kenshin, you heartless man, did you really lose your memory and forget about this Empress? You once said that this Empress is your heart, your eyes, your most beloved Xiaotiantian. We once swore to the sun and the moon that we would be together for all eternity." Empress Tantai's expression and tone were very real, as if she was really heartbroken and hurt by love. Ji Tianqing had goosebumps all over his body. Unable to bear it, he shouted angrily with a black face, "Enough! Shut the hell up! Tantai Xian, this seat will say it for the last time, whether it is the previous life, this life, or the next life. This seat will not have any feelings for you. You can be shameless and have no bottom line, but this seat disdains to be associated with you, lest you tarnish this seat's reputation." Suddenly hearing this sentence, the tears on Empress Tantai's face dried up in an instant, and the sadness disappeared in an instant. She pointed her finger at Ji Tianqing and laughed out loud in an unrestrained manner. "Ha ha, ha ha ha, didn't you pretend not to know this Empress? Finally can't pretend anymore? Kenshin, you didn't expect it, did you? After 1,000 years you and I actually meet again." Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "But when we meet again you still haven't changed. You are still as unrestrained and disgusting as before." Empress Tantai's laughter gradually stopped, and her face gradually turned cold. She stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment. She walked slowly towards Ji Tianqing and said in a cold voice, "Kenshin, this Empress has deep feelings for you, and has been infatuated with you for hundreds of years. In order to be with you, this Empress was not even afraid of being ridiculed by the world and took the initiative to send herself into your arms. But you? How did you treat this Empress back then? And how you humiliated this consort in front of everyone? Could it be that you've forgotten? How can there be such a heartless and cold-blooded thing like you in this world? Now that you have come back from the dead and have started over, you are still so heartless when you see this Empress again. Even if you have been reborn, do you still have no feelings for this Empress?" Ji Tianqing looked at her with a cold face and said firmly, "Of course not." "Ha!" Empress Tantai sneered with a face full of self-mockery. While walking towards him, she reached out to untie her golden dress. Chapter 21-29. Under the hazy moonlight, the night wind was cold. Empress Tantai's golden dress hung down to her waist, revealing her snow-white and tender shoulders. A thin white gauze wrapped around her chest, but it could not cover the towering peaks. Facing such a tempting scenery, Ji Tianqing was still indifferent. He closed his eyes and said indifferently, "Tantai Siener, you know the answer, why do you want to humiliate yourself?" Empress Tantai came in front of him and stopped 10 steps away from him. The self-deprecating sneer on her face gradually turned into resentment and anger. She glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted coldly, "You don't even dare to look at me? Do you really despise me so much? There are countless men in the world who are obsessed with me. Only you are so disdainful of me." Ji Tianqing said calmly, "No matter how beautiful the skin is, it's just a pink skeleton. Only shallow and lecherous men will be fascinated by you. There are countless men in the world. How can they all be infatuated with you? That's just your imagination. What's more, you have lived for thousands of years, and in order to cultivate the enchanted woman technique, you have sucked countless men dry. A pair of jade arms for thousands of men to sleep on, 2 red lips for tens of thousands of men to taste. As long as they are clean men, they will not like you." Empress Tantai stared at Ji Tianqing with wide eyes. After being stunned for a moment, she suddenly burst into laughter. A pair of jade arms for thousands of men to sleep on? 2 red lips for tens of thousands of men to taste? Ha 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 ha. So that's how it is. This consort finally understood. Was this the reason why you looked down on and humiliated this consort? Then what if I tell you that things are not as you think? I have indeed cultivated the enchanted woman technique, and swallowed the essence and power of tens of thousands of men. But the men who have really had sex with me are no more than 10. And they are all famous overlords, all famous martial saints." Ji Tianqing still closed his eyes and said expressionlessly, 10, 100, or 1,000, what's the difference? You don't have to tell me anything because it has nothing to do with me. Tantai Siener, I'll make things clear again tonight. I hope you can respect yourself and not make any more mistakes. Empress Tantai sneered as she put on her golden dress and fastened her collar. What a good don't make mistakes. Kenshin, you're still the same as before, cold and heartless, as stubborn as a rock. Before tonight, this consort's heart had softened and I had hesitated whether or not I should come and see you. However, this consort is still unwilling to give up. This consort still harbors a trace of hope, thinking that you might change your mind after being reborn. If you still haven't recovered your memories, this consort will wholeheartedly protect you and serve you wholeheartedly. Now it seems that this consort was overthinking things again. Empress Tantai's tone became colder and colder. Apparently, she had completely given up and no longer had any illusions. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes and looked at her. With a calm expression he said, "It's good that you can understand. Why bother me again? From now on we won't have anything to do with each other. Don't appear in front of me. Goodbye." After that, he cupped his hands to Empress Tantai and was about to leave. Empress Tantai sneered, "You're really confident and naive. Do you think this consort came to you tonight just to reconnect with you? Impossible. You've hurt this consort too deeply and I've suffered great shame and humiliation. How can I just let it go like this? Back then this consort wanted to take revenge on you. But your strength was too high and you ascended to the upper realm. Now that you're cultivating from the beginning and your strength is so weak, this is a great opportunity for this consort to take revenge. But don't worry, this consort will never kill you. This consort will let you live well. Be this consort's boy toy. Kneel at my feet every day and kiss my toes." As soon as her voice fell, Empress Tantai no longer concealed her intentions. Her palms shot out like lightning, and a pink brilliance shot towards Ji Tianqing. The pink light was the special power of the enchantress art, which had the effect of seducing the soul. Once eroded by the pink light, one would lose their mind and become a puppet under Empress Tantai's control. I've already expected that you're up to no good." Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He sneered contemptuously and shot out a dazzling star fire towards Empress Tantai. Boom! The star light and the pink light collided, and a thunderous sound erupted. The night sky within a few hundred miles was lit up, and the earth trembled violently. The two of them were evenly matched. and neither of them had gained the upper hand. Empress Tantai's face changed immediately. She frowned and said in a low voice, "Damn it! Your strength has recovered so quickly, and you've already surpassed the rank 6 martial sage realm?" Ji Tianqing chuckled, "You're wrong. I've just broken through to the martial sage realm tonight. You should have seen the heavenly vision earlier, right?" "That's impossible." Empress Tantai couldn't believe it, and she shouted in shock, "You've killed 2 demon sages a long time ago, so you must have reached the martial sage realm long ago. Moreover, you've just broken through to the martial sage realm, so how can you have such strength?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Don't forget who I am. Nothing is impossible for me." Empress Tantai's body trembled, and she came to her senses, muttering to herself, "Yes. How could I forget that you're the famous Kenshin, the immortal king of the galaxy? However, it's too early for you to be proud. I was just testing you and I haven't even used 70% of my strength. I've said that I'll make you my pet tonight, and you'll never escape." After saying that, Empress Tantai made a series of hand seals and quickly formed a mysterious seal. "Heavenly Star Rain. Enchantress seduces the soul." Following her cold shout, the night sky around Ji Tianqing immediately lit up with a pink light that soared into the sky. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the pink light formed a light shield that covered a radius of 300 miles, covering the entire area. Around Ji Tianqing, 4 women appeared out of thin air. They were about 100 feet tall and they were wearing short skirts. These women all looked 70% like Empress Tantai. Their appearances were full of exotic charm. Their clear eyes were captivating, and they exuded an intoxicating charm. The 4 women were slim, and they were as plump as peaches. They were so tender that it seemed like water would come out of them. They were only wearing a chest wrap and a very short skirt that was made of translucent white gauze. From time to time, some seductive scenes could be seen, which made one's imagination run wild. This huge pink light shield was Empress Tantai's unique skill, the Ecstasy Realm. Inside it, one's spiritual soul would be invaded at any time, and one would not be able to concentrate. Chapter 2130. An invisible soul-sucking power quietly invaded Ji Tianqing's body, causing his mind to be distracted. He quickly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb to wrap his divine soul to keep his mind clear. At the same time, Empress Tantai's sleeves fluttered as she danced with 2 colorful ribbons in her hands, sprinkling dazzling light that blotted out the sky. Ji Tianqing quickly took out the Burial of Heaven sword and used his unique swordsmanship to fight against her. Sword of Shattering Sun. The Burial of Heaven sword instantly stabbed out hundreds of sword lights, forming a mysterious sword array and stabbing at the dazzling light all over the sky. Bang! 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 In a series of muffled sounds, the sword lights and colorful dazzling light exploded at the same time, turning into a rain of fragments that scattered in the field. At this time, the 4 demon beauties rushed over and besieged him. They were holding a sword, a jade flute, a long whip, and 2 sabers respectively, slashing at Ji Tianqing. With every movement, the thin white veil fluttered, revealing a blushing scene that made people unable to look directly at. If it were a lecherous lecher, it would be a feast for the eyes. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was not a lecher and did not bother to look at it. He simply closed his eyes, using the heavenly dragon palm with his left hand and a dozen sword lights with his right hand to resist the siege of the 4 demon beauties. Bang! 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 Clang! Clang! A burst of sword lights colliding and the sound of weapons clashing came out, and the 4 demon beauties were all sent flying by Ji Tianqing. They did not cry out in pain or scream, but let out a burst of shuddering gasps and coquettishness, which was very nauseating. Ji Tianqing glared at Empress Tantai fiercely and scolded with a black face. "Tantai Siener, you really have no bottom line, using such a dirty trick." Empress Tantai waved her colorful ribbons to speed up the attack while laughing loudly. "Ha ha ha, which man is not lecherous? Isn't this what you want? If you want to see it, just enjoy it. Why hide it? Shameless." Ji Tianqing frowned and scolded, using all his strength to fight back. However, the angrier he was, the happier Empress Tantai was. While fighting Ji Tianqing, she threw him a coquettish glance and said with a charming tone, "Those 4 beautiful women are not illusions, They are my trusted maidservants who have been carefully cultivated by me for hundreds of years. Why don't we stop here? Let's go find a cave and let this consort and the 4 servant girls serve you well. Both of us are proficient in the enchanted woman art. Coupled with our special physiques, I guarantee that you'll be unable to extricate yourself from the ecstasy. Ji Tianqing's face darkened, and he scolded coldly, Tantai Siener, do you have any sense of shame? Your mind is filled with the thoughts of men and women having sexual intercourse. Instead of being ashamed of it, you're proud of it. What an eye-opener. The smile on Empress Tantai's face grew brighter as she said in a seductive manner, back then, you were so high and mighty that you didn't even spare me a glance. Even if this consort were to kneel in front of you and beg to be your personal maidservant without any status, you would still refuse. I didn't expect you to have such a day. Even if you're humiliated by this consort, no matter how angry you are, you can't do anything to me. Ha ha ha. This is so interesting, so satisfying. This consort can't wait any longer. I just want to capture you immediately, turn you into a pet boy, and then find ways to pamper you. Don't worry, this consort has a lot of tricks. Even if I pamper you for 10 years and you don't get out of bed, there won't be any repeated positions. Ji Tianqing was completely speechless. He had fought and killed tens of thousands of enemies all his life. He had experienced tens of thousands of battles and killed millions of enemies. He had personally experienced all kinds of dangerous scenes, such as mountains of swords, seas of fire, rivers of blood, and purgatory. Only this battle was so special. This was the most erotic, awkward, and speechless battle in his life. No matter if it was a sinister and cunning enemy or a fierce and overbearing enemy, he had ways to deal with and solve them. Only a woman like Tantai Sien, who had no bottom line and was even more shameless, made him feel deeply helpless. Tantai Sien was born to be an unrestrained and seductive demoness. Every look in her eyes and every word she said was tinged with a pink hue. Normal people couldn't communicate with her properly. Ji Tianqing not only closed his eyes, but he also didn't even bother to speak and launched a counterattack with all his strength. He used his divine sense to explore the entire ecstasy domain, fighting with Empress Tantai and the 4 beauties. Under the investigation of his divine sense, Empress Tantai and the 4 beauties were all white skeletons, without the slightest sense of beauty. Even if Empress Tantai kept saying lewd words that made people blush and let out a few rippling gasps from time to time, he turned a deaf ear to it. In just 100 breaths of time, the 2 sides fought over 1,000 moves, but there was no clear winner. Ji Tianqing was deeply besieged, but he was also unharmed. Empress Tantai had been holding the initiative, attacking like a storm, but she still couldn't gain the upper hand. As for the 4 beauties, they were sent flying again and again by Ji Tianqing, adding a few more wounds on their bodies, and dark red blood oozed out. But they didn't know pain at all, and turned a blind eye to their injuries, desperately besieging Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing found that Empress Tantai had lied to him. They were not 4 maidservants at all, nor were they living people, but 4 puppets refined by a secret method, similar to magic weapons. However, these 4 beauties were refined very exquisitely and lifelike. After the 2 sides fought for more than a dozen moves, Ji Tianqing decisively seized the opportunity and used his unique skill, Burial of Heaven Sword. He shouted coldly, holding the Burial of Heaven sword with both hands, and stabbed at the sky with all his strength. Swoosh! A black light rushed into the sky as if to pierce the sky. This sword technique was the last move of the Burial of Heaven 9 swords, and it was also the most powerful move. In the next moment, the pitch-black beam of light pierced the pink light barrier and exploded with a thunderous boom. Kaboom! A large hole was instantly pierced through the gigantic pink light barrier, and cracks began to appear all around it. Empress Tantai's ecstasy domain, which she was proud of, was pierced by Ji Tianqing's sword. When the domain was broken, she also suffered a backlash. Her body stiffened immediately, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing formed a sword technique with both hands and performed another unique sword technique. 10,000 swords return. Following his cold shout, tens of thousands of cracks instantly appeared in the gloomy sky above. Outside the void, endless star power condensed into tens of thousands of giant starry swords, pouring through the cracks. In just a short breath, tens of thousands of starry swords fell like a meteor shower. Boom! 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 The starry swords all hit the pink light shield, and a loud noise shook the 9 heavens. A total of more than 5,000 starry swords collapsed on the spot, and turned into starlight that illuminated the night sky. The pink light shield within a radius of 300 miles was also completely destroyed and torn apart. Empress Tantai was using all her strength to cast a spell, controlling the ecstasy domain to resist the bombardment of the 10,000 swords. But she failed in the end and couldn't block it. Puff! Chapter 2131. The ecstasy domain collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianxing and Empress Tantai's figures reappeared in the night sky. The 4 scarred beauties temporarily lost their function, and were put away by Empress Tantai. She raised her sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth and slowly looked up at Ji Tianxing. Her eyes were full of resentment as she scolded, "You heartless man, what a cruel heart." Ji Tianxing looked at her expressionlessly and said calmly, "I have already said that there is nothing between you and me. I have never had feelings for you. How can I be heartless?" Empress Tantai frowned and curled her lips. "I don't care. In short, you are the one who has betrayed me." Ji Tianxing also frowned. With a dark face, he said with an indifferent tone, "Don't you want to take revenge? Do you still want to fight? If not, I'm leaving." After that, he turned around and was about to leave. He was too lazy to be entangled with Empress Tantai. Empress Tantai did not give up. She teleported in front of him and blocked his way. "Don't you think you can get rid of me? After being humiliated by you, I have endured more than 300 years of humiliation and had to live in seclusion. For the past 1,000 years I have hated you day and night. Now that the heavens have taken pity on you and sent you back to me, how can I let you go?" Ji Tianxing looked at her coldly and said in a serious tone, "Tantai Xian'er, I am warning you for the last time. Don't pester me endlessly, or you will have to bear the consequences." Empress Tantai saw that he seemed to be really angry, and immediately put on an aggrieved expression and was about to cry. She slowly walked towards Ji Tianxing and said in a choked voice, "You bastard, why do you treat me like this? I am so infatuated with you, why do you keep rejecting and hurting me? I know that you were obsessed with martial arts in your previous life, and never had feelings for any woman. But in this life you already have a sweetheart, which proves that you are not a god but also a person with feelings. If you can love that woman deeply, why can't you give me some of your feelings?" Ji Tianxing's expression was indifferent as he said, "It seems that Guanji really is a spy sent by you. She actually managed to find out so much information. That's right, not only did I love her deeply, but I also married her and had a pair of children with her. She is the person I love the most in this life, the person I will protect for the rest of my life, but you are not qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as her. Not to mention that I am her husband and must be loyal to her. Even if she didn't exist, I would never accept you." Empress Tantai's face was filled with despair, and her bright eyes dimmed. She stood in front of Ji Tianxing and said in a low voice, "All right, since you already have someone in your heart, I will fulfill your wish and will no longer pester you. However, you and I have been entangled for 1,000 years, but I have never even held your hand. I only have one wish. Can you give me a hug? This way I'll give up. From now on, I'll never appear in front of you again." After saying that, she slowly stretched out her arms, as if she wanted to hug Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing instinctively stepped back and was about to sternly refuse. But her face was pale and her spirit was dispirited. She looked weak and pitiful, but her eyes were full of hope. She laughed bitterly at herself and said, "In front of the world, I am the noble and arrogant empress of the Cha Nu tribe, but in front of you, I have abandoned all my dignity and even have no bottom line. Are you really so heartless that you won't even give me a trace of sympathy and pity?" Ji Tianxing frowned and fell into hesitation. After a moment of silence, he asked in a deep voice, "Can you swear to God that if I fulfill your wish, you will completely give up and never pester me again?" Empress Tantai's eyes were rekindled with hope, and she raised her hand to swear to God without hesitation. "I, Tantai Xian'er, swear that as long as Kenshin fulfills my wish, I will leave from his sight and never appear again. If I violate this oath, I am willing to be punished by God. Seeing Tantai Xian'er's serious face and firm and decisive tone, Ji Tianqing gradually lowered his guard. Perhaps I was indeed too heartless and too harsh on her? This thought flashed through his mind, and he sighed secretly and said in a calm tone, in that case, I promise you, but don't have any improper thoughts. After that, he stood upright in the night sky with his arms hanging by his side and closed his eyes. Kenshin, thank you. Empress Tantai thanked him sincerely, and her eyes flashed with joy. Then she stretched out her weak arms, hugged Ji Tianqing's waist tightly, and put her cheek on his chest. Feeling his body temperature and heartbeat, as well as the masculine breath of a man, Empress Tantai's heart suddenly beat faster, and a happy smile appeared on her face. The next moment, a golden light suddenly lit up in her palm, and a dark golden rope appeared. At the same time, she whispered in a strange tone, Kenshin, you miscalculated. How can I let you go? How can I bear to see you with another woman? When she said this, the dark golden rope in her palm began to dance like a spirit snake. In the blink of an eye, the dark golden rope had wrapped itself around Ji Tianqing's body more than 30 times, completely tying him up. He was tied up tightly, and his arms were pressed tightly to his sides. His legs and feet could not move. Not only that, the dark golden rope was not an ordinary object. It released a mysterious and powerful sealing power, and sealed his body and spiritual power on the spot. He was tied up like a dumpling, and his body was stiff and fixed in place, and he had lost the ability to resist. Other than opening and closing his eyes, he could do nothing else. Ha 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 ha. Success! It took me 100 years to find this God-binding rope, and it was refined from the legendary tendons of the divine dragon. Not to mention that you are only a martial sage. Even if you are a martial god, you will not be able to escape from it. Empress Tantai let go of him and laughed complacently. She stood in front of Ji Tianqing, reached out and stroked his cheek, and said with a serious face, from tonight onwards you are mine, and you will not be able to escape in this lifetime. Ji Tianqing looked at her calmly. He didn't panic, nor did he reveal a trace of anger. As I expected, you have been intertwined in love and hate for thousands of years, and your mind has long been distorted. How can you abide by the oath? However, you have just made an oath, and you have broken it in the blink of an eye. Are you really not afraid of the wrath of heaven? Empress Tantai shook her head, stretched out 2 fingers and pressed them on his lips and said with a smile, it is not that my mind is distorted, but that I have long gone crazy. As for the wrath of heaven? As long as I can have you, so what if I suffer the wrath of heaven? Ji Tianqing sighed helplessly and asked, what is it about me that makes you so crazy? Tell me and I will change, okay? Empress Tantai thought seriously for a moment, and said in a firm tone, you are the #1 genius, the #1 talent, the most mysterious and the most powerful man in the world. I really can't find any man in this world who is more outstanding than you. So you are destined to be my man. Chapter 2132. Tantai Xian'er, you are playing with fire. Ji Tianqing looked at Empress Tantai coldly and warned her in a solemn tone. Empress Tantai didn't take it seriously. She curled her lips in disdain and sneered. Now you are tied up by my God-binding rope and can only be at my mercy. Besides threatening me, what can you do to me? I won't play with fire tonight. I will only play with you. In Ji Tianqing's mind, the voice of burial of heaven immediately sounded. Ahem. I have endured for a long time. This time I really can't help it. There are some things that need to be said. This Tantai Xian'er has already fallen in love with you. Why don't you take pity on her and give in to her? Ji Tianqing's forehead was full of black lines. He replied with his divine soul, burial of heaven, you are encouraging me like this. Are you tempted? Why don't you transform into a human form and go back with her instead of me and accompany her? Humph! Burial of heaven snorted disdainfully and said in a low voice, this old man is the soul of the divine sword, not a mortal creature. How can I have a mortal heart? However, her so-called God-binding rope is a fake. You can obviously break free. Why are you willing to be tied up by her? This old man thinks you have a hard mouth but a soft heart. Your mouth says no, but your body is very honest. Shut up. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily, "Don't frame me. I don't have that kind of idea. I have always stayed away from this kind of wanton crazy woman. The reason why I didn't make a move is that I want to see what she wants to do. 1,000 years have passed, and the situation of the continent is different from before. It has long become very complicated." "Okay, you are right," Burial of Heaven responded indifferently. "Then you go back with her to the bridal chamber." "You!" Ji Tianqing was suddenly angry, but he couldn't defend himself. At this time, Empress Tantai saw him silent, stretched out 2 fingers, raised his chin, and asked with a charming smile, "What are you thinking about? Do you think it is a bit inappropriate for us to consummate our marriage here in the wilderness? Ha ha ha. Don't worry, I will take you back to the imperial court and settle you down in the palace. I will also send many maids to serve you." After that, she carried Ji Tianqing in one hand and flew to the southeast. Ji Tianqing frowned, and a look of doubt flashed in his eyes. He thought, imperial court? Which imperial court? Is it the imperial court of the imperial court of Chang? Can it be that Tantai Xian'er and the imperial court of the empire? Thinking of this, he felt things the matter. Therefore, he suppressed his doubts and allowed Empress Tantai to carry him as they flew through the night sky at lightning speed. Empress Tantai's speed was extremely fast. Every step she took could cross 50 miles. In a short 2 hours, she had flown 30,000 kilometers away. A's. In order not to be discovered, Empress Tantai flew 10,000 meters above the clouds and sped up. About 10 hours later, she finally arrived at the imperial city of the Changyang Empire. At this time, she used the invisibility secret technique to hide herself in Ji Tianqing. Whoosh! She descended from the sky and flew to the bustling imperial city of the Changyang Empire. It was afternoon, and the warm sun shone on the Changyang Empire. But inside and outside the Changyang Empire there was a bleak scene. The city walls were full of armored soldiers. In the imperial city, there were no crowds or merchants. The streets and alleys were deserted. Obviously, most of the people in the Changyang Empire had fled because of the war in the north. Ji Tianqing looked at the Changyang Empire calmly and thought to himself, Tantai Xian are really colluded with the Changyang Empire. Her nest is in the imperial city. So, it must be Du Changchang who deliberately arranged for Guanji to be a spy by my side. After a while, Empress Tantai took him and flew into the magnificent imperial palace. The imperial palace of the Changyang Empire was located in the center of the city. It covered more than 10 miles and had tens of thousands of houses and palaces. It was very solemn and imposing. Empress Tantai's residence was in the inner courtyard of the imperial palace, in the main hall of the Phoenix Palace. Phoenix Palace? Isn't this the palace of the Empress? Could it be that Tantai Xian she married the Changyang Holy Emperor and became the Empress? Ji Tianqing frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, after Empress Tantai entered the Phoenix Palace, she returned to the luxurious and bright palace. She threw Ji Tianqing on the bed and covered him with a brocade quilt. Then she called in a dignified tone, "Where is Wanru?" The door of the palace opened immediately. A young woman in a palace dress walked in quickly with her head lowered. She walked to the middle of the palace and bowed respectfully. "This servant greets the Empress. Please give me your orders." Empress Tantai said calmly, "Help me bathe and change my clothes." This servant obeys. The maidservant bowed and exited the bedchamber. Empress Tantai returned to the bedside and stroked Ji Tianqing's cheek. She smiled tenderly and said, "Don't worry, I'll take a bath now. I'll be clean and then I'll pamper you." Ji Tianqing felt a chill and goosebumps appeared all over his body. He almost couldn't help but break free from the god-binding rope. But he held back, closed his eyes and remained silent. He wanted to see what other tricks Tantai Xian had up her sleeves. Most importantly, what role did the Changyang Holy Emperor play? Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. After Empress Tantai took a bath, she took off her half-foot-high phoenix coronet, tied her hair into a noble woman's bun, and changed into a bright yellow dress. She returned to the palace alone, closed the door, and cast a spell to cover the entire palace. In this way, no matter what happened in the palace, the outside couldn't hear it. After she was ready, she kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot on the soft carpet toward the phoenix bed. Swoosh! The quilt was lifted. Empress Tantai stood by the bed and looked at Ji Tianqing with a smile. She reached out and brushed the long hair on her shoulder. She said with a charming face, "I've waited for 1,000 years, and my wish is finally coming true. Today you are my most beloved Kenshin. I will do my best to serve you and bring you the most unforgettable pleasure. But tomorrow, you will be my male pet and servant. You can only be humiliated and ordered by me. So enjoy today." After saying that, she slowly leaned over and sat on Ji Tianqing's body. She reached out and untied her long dress. An invisible charm spread out from her body and enveloped Ji Tianqing. The curtains around the phoenix bed also fell silently. A scene of spring breeze was about to unfold. But at this moment Ji Tianqing, who had been keeping his eyes closed and silent, suddenly spoke. "I've already said that you are playing with fire. My patience has been exhausted, and it's time to end everything." Chapter 2133. Empress Tantai had just taken off half of her clothes and was about to untie the white veil on her chest. But when she heard Ji Tianqing's words and saw the god-binding rope break into more than a dozen pieces, she was stunned on the spot. At the same time, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and slapped at her. Bam! The palm hit Empress Tantai's chest and sent her flying on the spot. She fell into the bedroom. Puff! She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face became as pale as paper. She did not have time to tidy up her clothes and quickly stood up. Her eyes widened as she stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. "My god-binding rope? How is this possible? How can you destroy my god-binding rope?" She never thought that the god-binding rope that she had searched the entire continent to find would be broken by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, who was tied up, was originally a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered by her. But now everything was ruined. Ji Tianqing reached out and brushed off the 2 pieces of god-binding rope. He said expressionlessly, "The real god-binding rope is a divine artifact. How can you have it? This god-binding rope of yours is nothing more than an ordinary saint artifact." "No, this is impossible." Empress Tantai shouted coldly and shook her head repeatedly. She could not accept this result. "He won't lie to me. This god-binding rope is indeed refined from dragon tendons," Ji Tianqing said indifferently. "Only the dragon tendons of the 9th heaven divine dragon can be refined into a real god-binding rope. Your god-binding rope is made from the tendons of a flood dragon. Who is this he you are talking about?" He vaguely guessed that this god-binding rope was not found by Empress Tantai. It was very likely that some man had refined this dragon tendons into a magic weapon and gave it to her as a god-binding rope. Empress Tantai did not respond to Ji Tianqing's words. She looked at the broken rope on the ground and cursed angrily. "Damn bastard! I trusted you so much and even became your wife. How dare you lie to me?" When Ji Tianqing heard her say this, he immediately understood that the person she was talking about was most likely the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor. At this time, Empress Tantai raised her head and glared at him with resentment. "So what if the god-binding rope is fake? Since you're here, don't even think about escaping." As she spoke, she formed hand seals with both hands and shot out dozens of colorful lights at lightning speed. Swish! Swish! The multicolored light flew out of the sleeping chamber and landed in all directions, immediately activating a ceiling formation. Shwa! Outside the sleeping chamber, a 5-colored light shield with a radius of thousands of feet immediately lit up, enveloping the entire sleeping chamber. This was a saint-level grand formation that Empress Tantai had spent a lot of time and effort to set up. As soon as the grand formation was activated, it immediately released a terrifying invisible force and suppressed Ji Tianqing. At the same time, 2 colorful long silk appeared in Empress Tantai's hands. "If I can't get the man, no other woman can." She glared at Ji Tianqing with a venomous look in her eyes. She waved a pair of rainbow-colored long silk and swept it towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 In an instant, the long silk danced out hundreds of colorful dazzling lights, like sharp blades shrouding his figure. "You've already gone mad," Ji Tianqing shouted in a deep voice. "Today, we'll settle this once and for all." As he spoke, he formed a sword seal with both hands and released hundreds of sword lights. stabbing toward Empress Tantai. These sword lights were more than 10 feet long. Formed by the power of stars and 5-colored divine thunder, their power was very violent. Bang! 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 The sword lights collided with the colorful dazzling lights, causing a series of muffled sounds, shaking the entire sleeping chamber violently. A violent shockwave exploded, instantly blowing up the sleeping quarters into smithereens. The ground paved with golden stones collapsed and the surrounding walls burst into rubble, turning a radius of 10,000 feet into ruins. Only the light barrier with a radius of 10,000 feet was still intact, sealing the ruins. Heavenly Maiden scattering flowers. A cold light flashed in Empress Tantai's eyes as she finally made up her mind to use her trump card. She shouted coldly, waved the colorful long silk with both hands, and flew gracefully into the sky. The next moment, her figure became illusory and blurred, spinning at an extremely fast speed. Swish! 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 The colorful long silk splashed out endless light blades and pink light balls, like a torrential downpour drowning Ji Tianqing. Within a radius of 10,000 feet, it was completely filled with light blades, like a pink hurricane. Not to mention a body of flesh and blood, even a divine artifact would be crushed into powder. However, Ji Tianqing's body lit up with silver starlight, forming an oval-shaped shield to protect himself. Thousands of light blades kept stabbing the starlight shield, letting out crisp, ding-ding-dang-dang sounds, but they could not break the shield. No matter how strong the light blades were, and how fierce their auras were, they could only leave dents on the starlight shield. Ji Tianqing continued to circulate his magic power, and soon the dents on the shield were repaired, leaving him unharmed. He looked up at Empress Tantai and said expressionlessly, "Tantai-sien, give up. 1,000 years have passed, and you haven't made much progress. You're only a level 7 martial sage. It's harder than ascending to heaven if you want to kill me." His tone was calm and indifferent, as if he was stating a fact. Empress Tantai was so angry that she had almost lost her mind and patience. "No. I don't believe it. You've just become a martial sage, how can you be my opponent? In another year or so you'll be even stronger and I won't have a chance anymore." Ji Tianqing shook his head gently and said coldly, "In terms of martial strength, you're too late. In terms of feelings, you've never had a chance. Alright, I don't have time to play with you anymore. You should wake up." After saying that, he slowly raised his right hand, put his index finger and middle finger together, and pointed to the sky. "Sword, come!" As he shouted coldly, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the distant sky. A dazzling golden light appeared, as dazzling as the sun. Swoosh! It was a sacred and mighty giant golden sword. It fell like a meteor, and slammed towards Empress Tantai. At this moment it was as if there were two suns in the sky. The dazzling golden light shrouded the entire red sun imperial city, and no one could open their eyes. Kaboom! The giant golden sword, which was thousands of feet tall, slammed into the 7-colored light shield with a divine power that could pierce through everything, and exploded with a loud bang. The 7-colored light shield was pierced through by the giant sword, and a huge hole appeared. Then the giant golden sword slammed into Empress Tantai, and her figure was submerged. Kacha kacha! A series of clear and melodious sounds of explosion rang out as the 7-colored light barrier within a radius of 3,000 meters collapsed, bursting out with dazzling fragments that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Chapter 2134. Bang! The destructive golden light shockwave spread out in all directions and engulfed the entire palace. Thousands of houses and palaces were destroyed into smithereens by the golden light, raising a cloud of dust. For a moment, the entire Scarlet Sun Imperial City shook violently as if a super earthquake had happened. It was unknown how many houses and buildings had collapsed in this disaster. Many people were injured or killed because of this. After a long while, the dust that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The Scarlet Sun Imperial City that was shaking nonstop also gradually returned to its peaceful state. Countless soldiers, guards, and civilians all rushed out of their houses and looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace. Everyone's face was filled with shock and confusion, not knowing what had happened. Tens of thousands of Imperial Guards, under the lead of dozens of Imperial Guards commanders, rushed to the Phoenix Perching Palace. However, when they arrived at the scene, they found that the Phoenix Palace had disappeared and only ruins were left. There was a handsome young man in a white robe standing in the sky with an indifferent expression. His expression was emotionless as he looked down at the ruins calmly. Many of the Imperial Guards looked at his feet and saw a huge crater. At the bottom of the deep pit, a woman covered in blood and dust slowly flew out. She looked very pathetic and her long dress was already in tatters, vaguely revealing a few patches of her snow-white skin. Her delicate and beautiful face was also covered in dirt and blood, making it almost impossible to see her face clearly. However, she did not care about her serious injuries or her pathetic appearance. She staggered up into the air, staring at Ji Tianqing with a venomous look in her eyes, and growled with a hoarse voice, "Bastard! You heartless and merciless bastard! I hate you! I will hate you for the rest of my life and I will never forgive you." Ji Tianqing looked at her calmly and was silent for a moment before he said, "After this, I hope you can wake up completely and stop being so stubborn. You are already the Empress of the Scarlet Sun Empire. Since you have chosen the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor, you should support him wholeheartedly. Don't cause any more trouble and don't have any unrealistic thoughts. Today I can spare your life, but this is the last time. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being ruthless and taking your life." Hearing his words, the Imperial Guards who came from all directions dispelled their doubts and confirmed Empress Tantai's identity. Instantly, countless Imperial Guards pulled out their swords and sabers and looked at Ji Tianqing with hostility. "How dare you attack our Empress? Men, take this arrogant bastard down. How dare you offend Celestial Empress? You should die 10,000 times for your crimes." Dozens of Imperial Guard commanders shouted with righteous indignation. They could not wait to attack Ji Tianqing with their swords. Ji Tianqing ignored these Imperial Army soldiers, not even bothering to glance at them. Empress Tantai raised her sleeve to wipe off the blood on her face. She looked at him with a sad face and sneered crazily. "Ha ha ha ha! How vicious and merciless! You want to take my life? You are indeed ruthless and heartless. Since you hate me so much, you can kill me now." After saying that, she opened her arms and flew toward Ji Tianqing without any defense. She looked as though she was ready to die. The surrounding Imperial Army marshals were all startled by this sight and hurriedly rushed over to stop and rescue him. "Empress, come back quickly. Don't panic, Empress. We are here to save you." Several Imperial Guard commanders flew toward Empress Tantai and tried to pull her back. The remaining 30 Imperial Guard commanders waved their swords and sabers at Ji Tianqing, besieging him. Ji Tianqing turned his head and glanced at the commanders expressionlessly. He waved his sleeve as though he was swatting flies. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light swept over and struck the 30-some Imperial Army marshals. With a muffled explosion, all of them were thrown back and fell into the ruins with blood spurting out of their mouths. At the same time, the other Imperial Guard commanders rushed to Empress Tantai's side and tried to stop her. Empress Tantai did not appreciate their kindness. She waved her palms and sent the Imperial Guard commanders flying. "Get lost." Ji Tianqing stared at her and said coldly, "Tantai Xian, do you really think I am a merciful person and will not kill you?" Empress Tantai seemed to have gone mad. She laughed contemptuously and said, "Ha! Who are you? You are the sword god whose name shakes the world. Who do you not dare to kill? Not only have you killed millions of enemies, but you have also killed the woman who was infatuated with you. How heroic you are." Ji Tianqing frowned and said with a cold expression, "Since you're so stubborn, I'll fulfill your wish." As he said that, a black light shone in his right hand and the Sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and placed it on Empress Tantai's neck. As long as he waved the sword in his hand, Empress Tantai's head would fall to the ground. Empress Tantai stared at him and sneered. "Why are you still hesitating? Do it. Do you still want me to help you?" As she said that, she held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and placed the tip of the sword on her forehead. "Come on. Pierce my forehead with your sword and shatter my soul along the way. Only then will I die completely." "That's good. I'm completely awake now and I won't bother you anymore." Empress Tantai said coldly and resolutely. The Imperial Guard commanders were all frightened. They broke out in cold sweat and their hearts were in their throats. The dozens of Imperial Guard commanders all ignored their own injuries and roared hysterically. "Bastard, put down the sword! That is our Empress. If you dare to kill our Empress, our Red Sun Empire will not rest until you are dead. Boy, are you not afraid of Holy Emperor Red Sun's revenge?" These Imperial Guard commanders could not stop Ji Tianqing, so they could only use Holy Emperor Red Sun to intimidate him. But it was useless. Ji Tianqing ignored the Imperial Guards and looked deeply at Empress Tantai, who was close at hand, and said in a deep voice, "Tantai Xiener, why are you so stubborn and unrepentant? Only by killing you can I put an end to." Before he could finish his sentence, a thunderous roar suddenly came from the sky above the imperial city not far away. "Stop!" This was a middle-aged man's angry roar. It was like a thunderbolt that shook half of the imperial city. Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw a wisp of fiery light speeding towards them. In just 2 breaths, the ray of fire flew from 100 miles away and landed beside Ji Tianqing and Empress Tantai. Swoosh! The dark red flames faded away, revealing an old man with a medium build and white hair. Chapter 2135. Without a doubt, he was the Saint Emperor of the Scarlet Sun Empire. The tens of thousands of Imperial Guards around the ruins fell to their knees and kowtowed respectfully. "Greetings, Your Majesty!" The tens of thousands of people shouted in unison. The sound waves were like a flood, deafening to the ears. However, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun ignored the Imperial Guards and stared at Ji Tianqing fiercely. He shouted, "How dare you assassinate my Empress? Why aren't you surrendering?" Ji Tianqing kept the Sword of Burial of Heaven, and looked at Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun expressionlessly. Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun's appearance was similar to a man in his 50s. His skin was old and loose, and his hair was half black and half white. He looked very old. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, strange, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun didn't exist 1,000 years ago. He must have broken through to the martial saint realm less than 1,000 years ago. A martial saint less than 1,000 years old should be very young. How can he be so old? Even his strength is only at the 6th level martial saint realm. He's not even comparable to Tantai Xiener. Could it be that Tantai Xiener has absorbed his strength and essence? That's why he's so old and weak? At this time, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun saw Ji Tianqing keeping the sword and heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly flew to Tantai Xiener's side and hugged her in his arms. He asked with concern, "Lin Xiener, how are you? Are your injuries serious? Who is this bastard? Why did he try to assassinate you?" Empress Tantai glanced at Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun expressionlessly and struggled to break free from his embrace. She said coldly, "I'm fine." Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun didn't feel awkward and doted on Empress Tantai. He said in a dignified tone, "Xian, don't worry. This bastard dares to assassinate you. I won't let him off easily. No matter who he is, I'll make him pay the price." Empress Tantai glanced at him contemptuously and sneered. "Haha, you said it yourself, don't go back on your words later." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor still didn't know. He nodded solemnly and said, "I'm a man of my words. How could I lie to you?" Empress Tantai sneered again and asked in a deep voice, "Have you never lied to me? How do you explain the God-binding rope?" Ah! Red Sun Holy Emperor was stunned. He asked, "What's wrong with the God-binding rope?" Empress Tantai said coldly, "The God-binding rope you gave me is just a fake made from the tendons of a flood dragon." The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor was at a loss for words. He had an awkward smile on his face as he explained, "Lin Xian, don't be angry. The real God-binding rope is a divine weapon. Where would this emperor find it?" Empress Tantai sneered, pointed at Ji Tianqing and said, "All right, let's not talk about the God-binding rope for now. Now it's time for you to fulfill your promise and kill him." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor nodded without hesitation and said, "All right, Xiener, you retreat and heal your injuries first. After this emperor kills this madman, I'll come and heal you." After saying that, A golden light flashed in his right hand and a golden dragon-shaped sword appeared. He held the sword in his left hand and the golden sword in his right hand. He looked at Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. Empress Tantai took 2 steps back and looked at the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor with a sneer. Her eyes were full of contempt and ridicule. The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor glared at Ji Tianxing and shouted, "Brat, who are you? Why did you sneak into the palace and assassinate this emperor's empress?" Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly and said disdainfully, "Qiyang, it seems like you've been bewitched by Tantai Xian'er. You've lost your mind and become obsessed with her." Huh. The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Who is Tantai Xian?" Ji Tianxing pointed at Empress Tantai behind him and said in a dignified tone, "Her real name is Tantai Xian. Her real identity is the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe." "This emperor's empress?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor glanced at Empress Tantai, and then looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion. "Cha Nu tribe? Empress? Brat, what nonsense are you talking about? Everyone in this country knows that this is this emperor's empress, the devastatingly beautiful Princess Lin Xian." "Ha ha ha." Ji Tianxing sneered disdainfully and shook his head. "Scarlet Sun, it seems that not only do you not know about the Cha Nu tribe, but you are also kept in the dark by her. The Cha Nu tribe's reputation is known by all the veteran experts in the continent. Tantai Xian'er, as the empress of the Cha Nu tribe, is a demoness who can bring disaster to a country. If this emperor knew that you are so stupid, this emperor would not have come to the Scarlet Sun Empire to help, let alone care about your life and death." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was completely dumbfounded, and his face and eyes were filled with confusion. He turned his head to look at Empress Tantai, who was smiling coldly, and then looked at Ji Tianxing, who was wearing a cold expression. After a long silence, his anger dissipated and he looked at Empress Tantai in confusion and asked, "Lin Xian'er, is what he said true? This emperor believes you, he must be slandering you, right?" Empress Tantai ignored him and looked at Ji Tianxing with scorching eyes and sneered. "Did you see that? You abandoned me like a worn-out shoe, but someone else treats me like a treasure. Even if he knew that he was fooled by me, he still loved me for hundreds of years and obeyed me." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "Only this kind of brainless worm would be captivated by you." No matter how stupid the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was, no matter how fooled he was by Empress Tantai, he could still hear the clues at this moment. He stared at Empress Tantai in disbelief and asked in a deep voice, "Lin Xian, could it be that what he said was true? Are you really the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe?" Empress Tantai looked at him contemptuously and sneered. "So what if I am? Didn't you willingly become a subject under my skirt and be ordered around by me? For hundreds of years you were intoxicated by the pleasure I brought to you. You would rather not make any progress in your cultivation than be absorbed by me. This is all voluntary. Are you going to go back on your words now?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor shook his head subconsciously and quickly said, "No, you are this emperor's empress. No matter what your past is, this emperor can let bygones be bygones." Empress Tantai suddenly smiled brightly and pointed at Ji Tianxing. "Then what are you still in a daze for? Why aren't you killing him?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor looked at Ji Tianxing and recalled what he said before. He felt that something was wrong and asked doubtfully, "Your Excellency said that you are here to help the Scarlet Sun Empire in battle. May I ask who your Excellency is?" Ji Tianxing said indifferently, "Ji Tianxing." These 3 short words were like a bolt from the blue, making the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor feel as if he was struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. After a long while he finally came back to his senses. He stared at Ji Tianxing dumbfounded, and his expression became extremely complicated. You are actually the first disciple of Luotian Mountain." Chapter 2136. Ji Tianxing's name and deeds had long spread throughout the Luoshui kingdom. However, the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was the same as the commoners. He had only heard of Ji Tianxing's name and had never seen him in person. Therefore, when he found out that the white-robed young man in front of him was the famous Ji Tianxing, his state of mind was in a mess. How can this be? How can this be? How can you be Ji Tianqing? Holy Emperor Qiang murmured in despair. He was at a loss and did not know what to do. Ji Tianqing was the #1 God's disciple in the Luo Shui kingdom. He was the most valued person by the Divine Master, and also the #1 genius in the continent. Most importantly, he had killed 2 great demon sages and annihilated millions of demon soldiers. In the northern battlefield, he was invincible and undefeatable. In just 3 months he had helped the White Frost Empire and Changlong Empire out of the siege and defeated millions of demon soldiers. The Qiang Empire had been waiting for him for a long time, and finally he was here. Soon the Qiang Empire would be saved and the demon soldiers would be defeated. Holy Emperor Qiang had thought more than once about how to arrange a ceremony to welcome their savior, Ji Tianqing, with the most enthusiastic and grand ceremony. However, he did not expect that his first meeting with Ji Tianqing would be under such circumstances. This was 2F*King embarrassing. Was there a more ridiculous situation than this? For a moment, Saint Emperor Scarlet's Sun fell into a dilemma. Empress Tantai had already expected his reaction and sneered contemptuously. Hey, Qiang, you have really insulted your name. You are so wishy-washy like a woman. What's wrong? Have you been squatting under my skirt for too long and can't straighten your back? Have you forgotten what you said just now? Are you going to break your promise in front of everyone? You untrustworthy, lustful, cowardly coward. Empress Tantai scolded Holy Emperor Qiang without any scruples. This made the tens of thousands of imperial guards feel embarrassed. Only then did everyone understand that the handsome and valiant white-robed youth was the legendary Marshal Ji. Filled with shame, they hurriedly put away their swords and weapons and quietly retreated to a distance. The situation now was really like a fight between gods. As mortals, they were not qualified to intervene. Holy Emperor Qiang hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and making up his mind. He bowed to Ji Tianqing and said respectfully, General Ji, I have heard of your name for a long time. I have been looking for an opportunity to thank you face to face to face to face. It's a pity that the situation at the border is tense and I haven't had the time to pay you a visit. This is my negligence and I hope you can forgive me. When I came here just now, I didn't recognize your face and I was worried about my wife's safety. That's why I misunderstood and spoke rudely to you. I didn't mean to offend you, and I apologize to you with my humble servant. I hope that you can be magnanimous and forgive me. After saying that, he gave Empress Tantai a meaningful glance, wanting to drag her along to apologize to Ji Tianqing. Unfortunately, Emperor Qiang shut his eyes. Qiang, I have overestimated you. I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. You only know that he is Ji Tianqing and you are so humble to him. You even want me to apologize to him. Ha ha ha. What a joke. If you knew his other identity, you would probably kneel down and wipe his shoes, right? Emperor Qiang Empire laughed crazily. Her words were merciless and humiliated Holy Emperor Qiang. No matter how much Holy Emperor Qiang doted on her and tolerated her, he could not accept such humiliation. Moreover, it was in front of tens of thousands of imperial guards and citizens. Shut up. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was enraged. He glared at Emperor Qiang Empire and shouted, Lin Xian'er, don't you think you have caused enough trouble for me? I order you to apologize to young Master Ji immediately. How could Emperor Qiang Empire submit? She had completely given up. She looked at Holy Emperor Qiang Empire with resentment and sneered, Ha ha ha, Ji Tianqing wanted to kill me, and now you want me to apologize to him? Qiang, you are just afraid of his power and status. You are afraid of offending the Divine Lord and losing your position as Holy Emperor. You said that you are infatuated with me, and are willing to do anything for me. How laughable that I actually believed you. In fact, you are the same as all the other men in the world. You are all selfish bastards. Compared to Ji Tianqing, you are filthy and despicable and contemptible. Compared to Kenshin, you are more like a maggot in a smelly ditch, disgusting. I was really blind. Why did I marry you back then? I even slept with you for hundreds of years. Ha ha ha. I was so stupid. I was so blind. Emperor Qiang Empire opened her arms and looked up at the sky. Her voice was hoarse as she screamed crazily. Her whole body twitched in pain. After closing her eyes, 2 lines of blood flowed out from the corners of her eyes. Ji Tianqing looked at all this indifferently. There was no longer any ripples in his heart. Although this matter was already lamentable, he had already given up. He was no longer willing to sympathize with her. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was originally infatuated. Even if he knew that Empress Tantai was the empress of the Cha Nu tribe, he would not mind. He wanted to keep his position as Holy Emperor, but did not want to give up on Empress Tantai. That was why he persuaded Empress Tantai to apologize to Ji Tianxing. But he never thought that things would develop to this point. Empress Tantai said such vicious words in her grief and indignation, but they were all from the bottom of her heart. Only then did he understand that in Empress Tantai's heart, he was so filthy, inferior, and despicable. I am the dignified Holy Emperor Qiang Empire, but she humiliated me in front of the people of the imperial city. It's all because I was too soft-hearted and too arrogant to her. I actually let her become so crazy. If I don't kill her today, I will lose all my face and become the laughingstock of the empire. How can I rule the empire in the future? What's more, Ji Tianxing was there. If I don't deal with it properly, I will offend him. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was angry and humiliated. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. His eyes were stained with a layer of blood. He cupped his fist at Ji Tianxing and said in a sonorous tone, "I've made a fool of myself in front of you. I was fooled by this demoness and almost became a fatuous ruler. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing came out today and exposed the true face of this demoness. Only then did I wake up. Let me deal with my family affairs first and kill this demoness. Then I will thank Ji Tianxing." After that, he held the golden sword with both hands and unleashed all his power. He slashed at Empress Tantai. Swoosh! The golden light formed a giant sword that was thousands of feet long. It carried the power to split heaven and earth and fell on Empress Tantai's head. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire's strength was weaker than Empress Tantai. But Empress Tantai was seriously injured and was at the end of her rope. Chapter 2137. Empress Tantai's figure was drowned by the sword light. In the next moment she was going to be killed by Saint Emperor Qiang on the spot. At this moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly shouted coldly, "Stop!" By the time his voice sounded, Saint Emperor Qiang's sword had already reached Empress Tantai's head. How could he stop it? Whoosh! Ji Tianxing's figure flashed and teleported to Empress Tantai's side. His right hand lit up with a dazzling golden light as he grabbed at the top of her head. Boom! A huge golden hand instantly grabbed the giant sword that was thousands of feet long, and there was a muffled sound. The giant sword, which was originally incomparably violent, suddenly stopped after it was caught by the giant golden palm. It did not move an inch. Saint Emperor Qiang was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Ji Tianxing in horror. He never thought that Ji Tianxing would actually stop him from killing Tantai Xian. Moreover, he did not expect Ji Tianxing to be able to block his all-out attack with just one hand. This was simply too terrifying. At this moment, he finally understood what level Ji Tianxing's strength had reached. The tens of thousands of imperial guards and the citizens of the imperial city in the distance were all dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with astonishment. In the past, everyone had only heard that Marshal Ji was invincible and his strength was unfathomable. But that was just a legend. No one had seen it with their own eyes. Today they finally saw it with their own eyes. It was indeed terrifying. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's right hand gradually closed, and the golden hand also clenched tightly. Kacha-kacha sounds of shattering were heard. The 3,000-meter-long giant sword was shattered on the spot. Saint Emperor Qiang withdrew his sword with a complicated expression. He looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion and asked, "Marshal Ji? You are?" Ji Tianxing glanced at him calmly and said indifferently, "Forget it. She has lost her mind. She is also a pitiful person. Let her go." Tantai Xian was also stunned. She looked at Ji Tianxing's side face with a complicated expression. After a long while, she came back to her senses and sneered with a bitter expression, "Humph, I don't need your sympathy." Ji Tianxing didn't reply. He looked at her calmly and said, "Tantai Xian leave and never come back." Find a place to live in seclusion and focus on pursuing the peak of martial arts. Empress Tantai looked at him deeply and said in a low voice, Kenshin, today's matter. I will remember it. Let's meet again in the martial world. With that, she turned around and flew into the sky, turning into a ray of golden light and disappearing into the horizon. On the ruins of the imperial palace, nearly 10,000 people looked up at the sky and discussed with complicated expressions. After a long time, the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor regained his composure and spoke in a dignified tone. The queen of the Cha Nu race, Tantai Xian-er, impersonated the princess of the flower race, Lin Xian-er, and infiltrated the imperial court. For nearly 300 years, this emperor has been bewitched by Tantai Xian-er, but I still followed my heart and didn't cause a disaster. Fortunately, young Master Ji Tianxing came today and saw through the demonic woman's identity. Only then did he save this emperor and prevent this emperor's reputation from being damaged. And because of young Master Ji's benevolence, I spared the witch's life and this matter is over. From now on, no one is allowed to talk about this matter. Otherwise, they will be punished severely. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's voice was like rolling thunder, spreading across half of the imperial city. Countless imperial guards and commoners heard this and hurriedly bowed to show that they had obeyed. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor ordered with a dignified expression, all imperial guards, listen to my order. Immediately rescue the injured and repair the palace and houses. Tens of thousands of imperial guards accepted the order and quickly scattered to carry out the task. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor flew to Ji Tianxing and bowed to him with a smile. General Ji, thank you very much for today's matter. This emperor will order the Internal Affairs Department to arrange a banquet, and let this emperor entertain you well to express my gratitude. General Ji, please follow this emperor to the guest hall. Let's rest first. Ji Tianxing did not have a good impression of the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. He glanced at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, no need. I am busy with military affairs and have to rush back to the Starfall Valley. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor frowned slightly and tried to persuade him a few more times. But Ji Tianxing insisted and did not want to stay. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor could only give up and personally send him out of the imperial city. Along the way, he tried to find something to talk about and asked Ji Tianxing, General Ji, this emperor heard that you are in the Starfall Valley. Why did you come to the imperial city? Of course, Ji Tianxing could not tell him the truth, so he made up a lie. This emperor came to the Scarlet Sun Empire not only for the war, but also to investigate the queen of the Cha Nu tribe. I see. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor nodded to show that he understood. He was secretly alarmed. Oh no! Ji Tianxing came with bad intentions. He must have been ordered by the Divine Master. Could it be that the Divine Master already knew that this emperor's empress is the queen of the Cha Nu tribe? If that's the case, wouldn't this emperor's image in the Divine Master's heart be greatly reduced? Wouldn't I become a useless and lecherous ruler? The moment he thought of this, the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's heart was filled with worry. When Ji Tianxing saw the strange expression on his face, he asked, Oh right, Scarlet Sun, aren't you in the Heavenly Wolf Pass? Why did you come back to the Imperial City? The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor was stunned and thought to himself, damn it, this emperor already guessed that he would ask this question. But how can this emperor tell him that this emperor is looking for Lin Xian? It's just a coincidence that this emperor encountered this matter. He quickly came up with an idea and lied. This emperor has already arranged the military affairs in the Heavenly Wolf Pass and has to return to the Imperial Palace to deal with the government affairs. I didn't expect to encounter this matter. Ji Tianxing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile and said, Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor is really busy. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor hurriedly waved his hands and said humbly, Young Master Ji is too kind. As the ruler of a country, this emperor naturally has to work hard for the millions of citizens. This is this emperor's responsibility. Ji Tianxing didn't believe this nonsense at all and said calmly, all right, you can send me off here. I will take my leave now. If there's anything important, I will contact you again. In other words, if there wasn't anything important, don't bother me. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor also heard the signs and asked anxiously, Marshal Ji, please wait. May I ask if Marshal Ji will come to the Heavenly Wolf Pass to assist this emperor after the crisis in the Starfall Valley is resolved? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and waved his hand. Maybe there isn't a need. When the time comes, just wait for my message. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor frowned and mumbled, "What do you mean?" Ji Tianqing didn't explain and cupped his hands to the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor before flying away. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor stood in the air and looked at Zhang Yi's departing figure with a complicated expression. Only when Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared into the horizon did the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor heave a sigh of relief. He muttered to himself, "Damn it! Is this fellow a jinx?" Chapter 2138. When Ji Tianqing returned to Meteor Fall Valley, it was already evening. At this time, the 6 generals had long brought an army of over 500,000 and returned in triumph. Inside Meteor Fall Valley, the atmosphere was jubilant. Before Ji Tianqing set off for battle, no one knew where he was going to attack. Only now did everyone know that he brought an army of 600,000 to attack Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp. The most inconceivable thing was that he actually succeeded. Not only did he destroy Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp, he even killed over 1,000,000 fiends and even killed Commander-in-Chief Song Yu. This was absolutely a great piece of news, a great victory that raised everyone's spirits. Everyone understood that the destruction of Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp would definitely cause a tremendous blow to the Fiend Army's morale. Fiend Sage Song Yu being killed also made the Fiend Army leaderless and would definitely fall into panic. The Crimson Sun Empire was not far from victory. Before long, the Empire's army would be able to expel several million fiends and return home. That night, a grand celebratory banquet was held inside Meteor Fall Valley. Bonfires burned brightly everywhere, the fragrance of wine overflowing everywhere. The soldiers sang and danced, drinking to their heart's content all night. Especially those 6 generals who took part in the battle, they became the entire Meteor Fall Valley's focal point, receiving the reverence and envy of the million soldiers. But those 6 generals did not dare to claim credit. They all appeared very humble, pushing all of the credit to Ji Tianqing. No matter what occasion, they all spoke bluntly. The greatest contributor to this great victory was Commander-in-Chief Ji Tianqing. Without Marshal Ji's leadership, they absolutely could not have won, let alone create such glorious battle results. The soldiers were jubilant, but Ji Tianqing did not show up. He stayed alone in his residence in the Commander-in-Chief Palace, meditating and cultivating in a secret chamber. Whatever celebratory banquet, award ceremony, he was not interested in it. What he was thinking about was not just Meteor Fall Valley and the Crimson Sun Empire, it even included half the continent. The ancestral fiend god had the intention of withdrawing long ago. Now that Song Yu is dead, the fiend army in the northern border is constantly decreasing. I reckon that they will withdraw soon. After the fiend race's chaos is resolved, I have to make a trip back to Luotian Mountain first and report to Granny Long. In addition, I have to take a look at Yao Yao's cultivation situation, and the 2 children. He wondered if Yao Yao had refined the God Orb, and what realm had she reached. Now that the matters of the Luotian Mountain are settled, I will return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Now that I have returned to the Martial Sage realm, I can finally stand at the top of the mainland and rebuild the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. After making up his mind, he focused on cultivating and consolidating his martial arts foundation. Unknowingly, a day and night had passed. It was the night of the second day. The grand celebration banquet had long since ended, and the Starfall Valley had also regained its tranquility. Ji Tianqing was cultivating in the secret chamber when the voice of a young man suddenly rang out from outside the door. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Marshal Du just sent a message to invite you to the conference hall to discuss important military matters. When Ji Tianqing heard this, he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Outside the secret room stood a young man in armor, dressed like a guard. Ji Tianqing sized him up and asked, "Who are you?" The young man hurriedly bowed and answered truthfully, reporting to Marshal Ji, "This subordinate is a bodyguard sent by Marshal Du to serve you." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked again, "Where is Guanji?" The young guard hesitated for a moment before explaining with a difficult expression, Reporting to Marshal Ji, this subordinate does not know where Miss Guanji went. However, this subordinate heard that after you led the army to battle, Miss Guanji disappeared. Hearing him say this, Ji Tianqing understood what was going on and thought to himself, Guanji must have followed Tantai Xian'er's orders to deliberately approach me to gather information. When I led the army to battle, her mission was completed and she most likely went to find Tantai Xian'er. He threw this matter to the back of his mind and strode through the corridor, heading towards the conference hall in the front hall. After 100 breaths of time, he stepped into the conference hall. The conference hall was brightly lit, and there were more than 20 generals waiting in 2 groups. Marshal Du Changchang stood near the sand table and stared at it, lost in thought. Seeing Ji Tianqing enter the conference hall, all the generals saluted and said respectfully, "This general greets Marshal Ji." Du Changchang also cupped his fists and greeted him with a smile. "Marshal Ji, you finally come. Everyone has been waiting for you." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and asked calmly, "What is it?" Du Changchang did not beat around the bush and said bluntly, "Marshal Ji, you led an army of 600,000 and smoothly flattened the Fish Dragon Mountain camp and killed demon sage Tsongyu. This great victory has raised our army's morale and our fighting spirit. On the other hand, the demon race army must be in a panic and at a loss. This is the best opportunity for us to pursue them. We should set out as soon as possible and take down the other 2 camps in one fell swoop. After annihilating the demon race army outside Falling Star Valley, we can rush to Heavenly Wolf Pass's aid." Du Changchang was excited. His face flushed red and his bright eyes filled with expectation. The 20-some generals in the conference hall also echoed his words. "That's right, Marshal Du's words are reasonable. Marshal Ji, you can't hesitate. We must pursue them while they're victorious. Marshal Ji commands troops like a god. How can you not understand these principles? Everyone, don't worry. Marshal Ji will definitely lead the charge and utterly defeat the demon race army." Ji Tianqing saw that everyone was eager for battle and did not stop them. He nodded and said, "Since you all want to set out, then prepare the army for battle. In any case, the demon race army will be retreating soon. If you don't attack now, you won't have the chance to perform any meritorious service." Hearing this, all the generals were taken aback for a moment, all of them revealing looks of confusion. "What? The demon race army will be retreating soon? Marshal Ji, where did you get this news? Is it reliable? If that's really the case, then that's great. The demon race army is finally retreating. The soldiers can finally return to their homes. If the demon race army retreats, that's naturally for the best. The soldiers under this seat's command won't have to fight bloody battles and get injured or die." Obviously, not everyone was bloodthirsty and warlike. The reason why they led the army to battle was to protect their home and defend their country. They were forced to resist. Thus, the 20-some generals were immediately divided into 2 factions. One faction advocated setting out and only wanted to kill the demon race army, perform meritorious service, and make a name for themselves. The other faction advocated defending Starfall Valley and waiting for the demon race army to retreat so that they could return to their homes. Seeing this scene, Du Changchang couldn't help but frown. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression. "Marshal Ji, is what you said just now true? Is the demon race army really going to retreat?" Ji Tianqing said with an indifferent expression, "That's natural. However, we must put pressure on the demon race to urge them to retreat as soon as possible. Ben Shuai will personally lead the army into battle. Generals who want to perform meritorious service can take the initiative to apply." Chapter 2139. Ji Tianqing's decision was undoubtedly the best choice. The 20 or so generals all showed relieved smiles. The generals who were willing to participate in the war enthusiastically reported their names, intending to follow Ji Tianqing into battle. The generals who were not willing to fight stayed in Fallen Star Valley and waited for the war to end before returning home. After a while, this matter was settled. 12 generals were willing to go into battle, while the other 14 chose to stay in Fallen Star Valley. Ji Tianqing ordered the 12 generals to go back and prepare, waiting for his orders at any time. The other 14 generals also took their leave one after another. Only Ji Tianqing and Du Changchang were left in the Great Hall. Du Changchang said with a smile, "Marshal Ji really is a natural-born war god. Your grasp of the situation and the morale of the army is exquisite." He cupped his fists and bowed to Ji Tianqing, sincerely flattering him. Ji Tianqing did not appreciate it and looked at him indifferently, asking in a deep voice, "Du Changchang, you deliberately arranged for Guanji to stay by Ban Shuai's side, didn't you?" Du Changchang's face suddenly stiffened and he put on a slightly embarrassed smile. "Marshal Ji, what do you mean? Did Guanji offend you? Or did Guanji's sudden disappearance make you unhappy?" Ji Tianqing frowned and said with a dignified expression, "A straightforward person does not speak insinuations. You should know what happened in Qiyang Imperial City." Du Changchang quickly put on a smiling face and showed an expression of sudden realization. "Oh, so you are unhappy because of this. A few days ago, this old man and the imperial family knew that Marshal Ji was coming to help. This old man was busy preparing the welcoming ceremony when Miss Guanji came to Fallen Star Valley and brought a letter from Her Majesty the Empress. Her Majesty the Empress ordered that Marshal Ji come from afar to help resolve the crisis of the demon race. He is a great guest. Miss Guanji is her personal maid and is the most trusted one. She is also the best at serving people. Therefore, Her Majesty the Empress wants Miss Guanji to serve you personally and not neglect you." How could this old man dare to disobey Her Majesty the Empress? "Naturally, I'll do as you say." Speaking up to this point, Du Changchang stroked his white beard and sighed with compassion. Who would have thought that the gentle and virtuous Celestial Empress would actually be a demoness that could bring disaster to the country and its people? This old man also didn't expect Ji Shuai to personally head to the Imperial City and expose Celestial Empress' true colors. Now that he thought about it, that Lady Guanji most likely also had a problem. This old man was momentarily confused and did not investigate Guanji's identity. However, this old man knew nothing about this. "Please forgive me, Marshal Ji." What Du Changchang said was reasonable, and he pushed the responsibility away, making Ji Tianqing speechless. However, Ji Tianqing always felt that Du Changchang was too cunning and might not be clean. He stared deeply at Du Changchang and asked in a deep voice, "Du Changchang, you are not a general of the Qiyang Empire, but a martial arts master from the underworld. Ban Shuai will only ask you one thing. Are you loyal to Tantaisian Heir or Qiyang Holy Emperor?" Du Changchang also frowned and smiled bitterly. Marshal Ji's words are difficult to understand. The master of Qiyang Empire is His Majesty the Holy Emperor, and this old man is a citizen of Qiyang Empire, so of course I am loyal to His Majesty. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said indifferently, "This matter is over, you take care of yourself. Early tomorrow morning, Ban Shuai will lead the army to battle. You guard Falling Star Valley well." Du Changchang cupped his hands with a smile and said confidently, "Please rest assured, Marshal Ji. With this old man overseeing Falling Star Valley, nothing will go wrong." Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing gathered 500,000 soldiers and set out to attack a demon race fortress. The fortress had more than 600,000 soldiers stationed there. The terrain was steep and there were many defensive spirit arrays arranged around it, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, the fortress stored a large number of cultivation resources and war preparations. After Ji Tianqing led the army to the fortress, he did not need any planning or strategy. He just charged straight in. In any case, he took the lead and no one could stop him. Regardless of whether it was the layers of defensive spirit arrays or the tens of thousands of demon race guards, they were all like paper in front of him. All the obstacles blocking his advance were easily swept away by him. With the 500,000 soldiers following him, he only needed to clean up the mess. Could be said that it was very easy. This battle only lasted for 4 hours before it was declared over. More than 90% of the 600,000 demon race soldiers were wiped out. Only 10,000 managed to escape. The human soldiers destroyed the fortress and seized a large number of war preparations. Unfortunately, most of the cultivation resources were for the demon race's use. The human race could not use them. Ji Tianqing ordered the soldiers to destroy those resources on the spot. After this battle ended, the army returned to Falling Star Valley to rest and reorganize. However, Ji Tianqing did not rest. He led 700,000 soldiers and attacked another demon race camp that night. In any case, there were 12 generals following him. There were 1,200,000 soldiers at his disposal. That night, the night sky in the north of Falling Star Valley was brightly lit all night, surrounded by soaring flames. The commotion of the great battle spread thousands of miles away. The starlight, heavenly wind, and astral fire that fell from the sky could be clearly seen even 10,000 miles away. After daybreak, the human soldiers returned in triumph. Of the 700,000 soldiers, there were still 600,000 left. 100,000 soldiers had died on the battlefield. But the demon race camp was trampled flat. The million demon race army was turned to ashes, vanishing into thin air. After 2 consecutive battles, the soldiers under Ji Tianqing's command were already physically and mentally exhausted. They had to rest for a few days. And the demon race army outside Falling Star Valley only had a few 100,000 people left. They were trapped in a camp. Those remaining demon race had already completely lost their fighting spirit. They were in a constant state of panic, waiting for death to descend. Whatever army morale, it all collapsed and disintegrated. Ji Tianqing had been meditating in the Valley of Fallen Stars for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, he led an army of 500,000 and set off again. This time he was going to take down the last demon race camp and resolve the danger of Falling Star Valley. However, when he led the army to arrive outside that demon race camp, he discovered that the camp was silent and deserted. He personally entered the demon race camp and discovered that the camp was already deserted. It was like a dead city. The several 100,000 demon race army had already evacuated long ago. The cultivation resources and military supplies in the camp were also all taken away. Only the houses and palaces, as well as the underground demon's den, and the continuously operating Grand Array were left. Regarding this result, Ji Tianqing was not surprised. He ordered the destruction of the entire camp, then led the troops back to Falling Star Valley. After returning to Falling Star Valley, he sent a message to Holy Emperor Crimson Sun, reporting the situation in Falling Star Valley. Not long after the communication jade slip was sent out, a spiritual light flew over from the horizon and landed in Ji Tianqing's palm. After the spiritual light dissipated, a communication jade slip shockingly appeared. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. Frowning, he muttered, "Holy Emperor Crimson Sun replied so quickly? It can't be so fast. It shouldn't be him." Finished talking, his divine sense invaded the jade slip and read the information inside. Chapter 2140. This communication jade slip was indeed not sent by the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. It was an urgent message sent by Granny Long from the Luotian Mountain. There was not much information in the jade slip, only a few short sentences. However, to Ji Tianqing this was incomparably important news. "Tianqing, I already know about your deeds in the northern battlefield. I am deeply gratified and proud. Now that the situation is settled, the war will be over. After you have settled the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire, return to the Luotian Mountain as soon as possible. I heard that the Heaven End Divine Nation will hold the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, that is held once every 50 years. In this assembly, a divine pearl containing wind and fire appeared. It is most likely related to Yuniao." The information in the jade slip ended here. The first few sentences were all about the war in the north. It was not important. The last 2 sentences were what Ji Tianqing was most concerned about. The Divine Martial Sacred Assembly that is held once every 50 years? A divine pearl containing wind and fire? I clearly remember that the Heaven End Divine Nation did not hold such an assembly 1,000 years ago. And that divine pearl containing wind and fire, could it really be related to Yao Yao? This matter was extremely important. He quickly took out the communication jade slip and sent a message to Granny Long, asking about the details. After about a quarter of an hour, Granny Long sent a message back. This time she explained the matter in detail. The so-called Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is a martial arts assembly that was first held by the Heaven End Divine Nation 1,000 years ago. It is held once every 50 years. So far, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly has been held 20 times. This year is the 21st. The purpose of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is to allow the young martial saints of the continent to gather together and exchange their experiences. Most importantly, everyone can discuss and research together on how to reach the martial God realm and ascend to the upper world. Any martial saint expert, who is under 1,000 years old, regardless of race or force, can participate in the assembly. Other than exchanges and discussions, there are also competitions. The young martial saints who can be ranked in the top 10 will gain both fame and fortune, and become famous in the continent. Every Shinwu Sacred Assembly's rewards were extremely generous, so it attracted many young martial saints. After 1,000 years, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly had become the most powerful and eye-catching martial arts assembly in the continent. According to the reports of the spies in the Heaven and Divine Nation, the rewards of this Divine Martial Sacred Assembly were much more generous and mysterious than the previous ones. Not only were there a few peerless sacred artifacts and magic treasures, but there were also ancient sacred arts manuals. The most mysterious one was the pearl that was taken from the 9 heavens and contained wind and fire. According to the information reported by the spies, I have determined that the pearl is not simple. It is very likely to be the divine pearl that Yunyao needs. Tianxing, quickly settle the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire and return to the Luotian Mountain. This old woman will speak with you face to face. The information in the jade strip was very long, but Ji Tianxing patiently read through it. He put away the communication jade slip and pondered with a solemn expression. I see. 1,000 years ago, after I fell, the Heaven and God Nation held this sacred assembly. Not only could it allow martial sages to gather together to discuss the path to becoming a deity and ascension, but it also offered generous rewards. It was no wonder that it was so popular. Now that the wind and fire pearls have appeared, it doesn't matter if it's the God pearl that Yao Yao needs, I have to go there personally. Every divine pearl is related to Yao Yao's life and martial arts future. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, I will not give up. Ji Tianxing made up his mind. He decided to settle the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire first, and then return to the Luotian Mountain. Not long after, another spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in his palm. Swoosh! After the spiritual light faded, a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to scan the jade slip and read the message inside. This jade slip was sent by the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. Young Master Ji, this emperor has received the message you sent. This morning, the generals under this emperor's command also came to report that the 2 barracks outside the Heavenly Wolf Mountain Pass were also empty. This emperor personally went to the other barracks and strongholds to check on the situation, and found that the 4 million demon army had all disappeared. In the depths of the mountains, this emperor captured a small team of demons who were holding the rear. After torture, I found out the truth. As it turns out, the leader of the demons in the North Underworld Mountain issued an order 3 days ago for all the demons to withdraw from the battlefield and return to the North Underworld Mountain as soon as possible. Young Master Ji, this is great news. The demons have finally admitted defeat and retreated. After reading the message in the jade slip, Ji Tianxing silently put away the jade slip and pondered expressionlessly. The voice of the burial of heaven resounded in his mind. The demon army has finally retreated. This war that lasted 3 years has finally ended. Your mission has been completed, and you have become a great hero of the Luotian Divine Nation. Why are you not happy at all? Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said coldly, as long as the ancestor fiend god is not dead, I will not be happy. The retreat of the demon army is inevitable. With the current strength of the North Underworld Mountain, it is impossible for them to win against the Luotian Divine Nation. I think that since we all know that the North Underworld Mountain will lose, the ancestor fiend god must be very clear about this as well. But why did he still insist on starting the war? The burial of heaven was silent for a moment before replying. You mean to say that the ancestor fiend god starting the war and ordering the demon army to retreat today were all part of his plan? You suspect that this was all part of the ancestor fiend god's scheme from the beginning? Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, that's right. With the ancestor fiend god's nature, he is the coldest and most ruthless fiend god. He is the most selfish. Even if the demons in the North Underworld Mountain are his descendants, he will not have the slightest bit of mercy. What he wants is to sacrifice everyone, and use all possible means to help him recover his strength in the shortest time possible. Once he recovers to his peak state, he will become the death god that can move unhindered through the galaxy. Then, he can easily enslave the entire world. At that time, he will not be afraid of any gods, nor will he need any citizens or descendants. The Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. I understand now. You mean to say that from the beginning, the ancestor fiend god never thought of winning against the Luotian divine nation. What it needed was only war and slaughter. The demon army in the North Underworld Mountain massacred the citizens of the Luotian divine nation, and collected an endless amount of blood, chi, and souls to fill the blood sea abyss for the ancestor fiend god. Because of this, the ancestor fiend god was able to recover to the peak of the martial saint realm in just a few years. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a cold voice, "That's right. The defeat of the demon army is inevitable. But I am more worried that the ancestor fiend god gave the order to retreat because he has already achieved his goal. If that is the case, he will recover to the deity realm soon." The Burial of Heaven was also full of worry and said in a low voice, "If the ancestor fiend god recovers to the deity realm, I am afraid that even the three martial gods will not be his match. Before you recover to the deity realm, no one will be able to deal with him. When that happens, he will not need to send out millions of demons." Chapter 2141. Ji Tianqing and Burial of Heaven knew how terrifying the ancestor demon god was. Although 30,000 years had passed since the Great War of the Gods in the Antiquity Age, there were still many legends about it. Through the legends, Ji Tianqing could roughly estimate the ancestor demon god's peak strength. The ancestor demon god's peak strength was comparable to mine. We were both deity kings. I have been reborn for close to 30 years and have just broken through to the martial sage realm. In less than 10 years, it has recovered to the peak of the martial sage realm. Comparisons are odious. Ji Tianqing lamented in a complicated tone as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Burial of Heaven quickly consoled him. Actually, it has only been 10 years since you awakened. Moreover, the ancestor demon god is an ancient demon god. It constantly caused wars, and wherever it went, it would cause a shocking massacre. It can use the blood chi and souls of billions of living beings to recover its strength quickly. This is the demonic path. You are on the right path and rely on your own cultivation to recover your strength. Of course, you can't compare to it. Ji Tianqing nodded and said earnestly, "Although that is the case, I still feel that time is too tight. I am worried that after a year and a half, I will still be in the martial sage realm while the ancestor demon god will have recovered to the god realm." Burial of Heaven said firmly, "You don't have to worry. No matter how powerful the ancestor demon god is, it can't be that fast. Just by devouring the blood chi and souls of billions of living beings, he wants to recover to the god realm? Is it so easy to reach the god realm?" "I hope so." Ji Tianqing nodded and said no more. At that moment, the young guard's voice sounded from outside the secret chamber. Reporting to Marshal Ji, "Marshal Du has sent someone to invite you to the conference hall to discuss important matters." Hearing the young guard's voice, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself, "It seems that Du Changchang should know about the demon race's withdrawal. That's good. I will go and see him now and bid farewell to everyone." With that, he got up and walked out of the secret chamber. Seeing him come out, the young guard hurriedly bowed respectfully and followed him to the conference hall. By the time Ji Tianqing arrived at the meeting hall, Du Changchang and more than 20 generals were already waiting for him in the hall. Everyone's faces were filled with joy and excitement as they discussed noisily. Obviously, everyone had already heard the news of the devil race's retreat. Seeing Ji Tianqing's arrival, Du Changchang hurriedly raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. He said in a dignified tone, "General Ji is here. Everyone be quiet." The generals immediately stopped their discussion and quieted down. Everyone's eyes fell on Ji Tianqing as they bowed in unison. "Greetings, Marshal Ji." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, indicating that everyone was excused. He looked at Du Changchang and asked Marshal Du, "Did you invite me here for some good news?" Du Changchang nodded quickly and said with a smile, "Of course. This was great news." Marshal Ji's prediction was indeed like a god. The Devil Race army really retreated. Not only did the Devil Monarch outside Fallen Star Valley retreat, even the several million Devil Race army outside Heavenly Wolf Pass also disappeared without a trace. This war that lasted for 3 years we finally won. Those hateful Devil Race bastards had no choice but to admit defeat and retreat. Following his words, the other generals also echoed his words. Marshal Ji is really a god in commanding troops. He can foresee the future. Previously, Marshal Ji said that the Devil Race would retreat. The Devil generals didn't believe it. Didn't expect that it really came true. Heh. The Devil Race remnants must have been scared out of their wits by Marshal Ji's awe-inspiring reputation. They knew that staying behind was a dead end, so they fled with their tails between their legs. This hard-won victory was not only exchanged with the lives of our tens of millions of soldiers, but it was also single-handedly created by Marshal Ji. This general suggests that we must hold a celebratory feast in Fallen Star Valley to celebrate the victory of this war. All of us should toast Marshal Ji 3 times. Good. This suggestion is good. We all agree. Marshal Ji, please don't decline. All the generals were in an extremely good mood. All of them were in high spirits and immediately began to talk about preparing for the celebratory feast. Ji Tianqing pressed down with both hands, indicating for everyone to quiet down. He cupped his hands towards Du Changchang and the generals and said in a calm tone, "Marshal Du, generals, this seat thanks everyone for their assistance and help during this period of time in Fallen Star Valley. Now that the Devil Race army has retreated, the war is over. Everyone can enjoy peace and quiet. It's a pity that this seat still has important matters to attend to. I have to rush back to Luotian Mountain as soon as possible and cannot participate in everyone's celebratory feast." Hearing his words, all the generals revealed expressions of regret and pity. They all opened their mouths to urge him to stay. "Marshal Ji, you have saved our Scarlet Sun Empire. You are the greatest contributor. No matter what, please stay for 2 more days and participate in our celebratory feast. Allow all the soldiers to express their gratitude to you." "That's right, Marshal Ji. All the soldiers in Fallen Star Valley worship you. They all want to see your true appearance." After the generals finished speaking, Du Changchang also walked to Ji Tianqing's side. He lowered his voice and advised, "Marshal Ji, you are leaving today? Isn't this a little too sudden?" "Even if you don't want to participate in the celebratory feast, please stay for 2 more days. Just now, Lord Saint Emperor sent a message to invite you to the Imperial City. He wants to personally host a feast for you. Even if you want to leave, you have to give Lord Saint Emperor some time to personally send you off." Ji Tianqing didn't have a good impression of Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor and didn't want to give him any face. Thus, he shook his head indifferently and said, "Marshal Du, this seat indeed has important matters to attend to. I have to rush back to Luotian Mountain as soon as possible to report. As for Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor, this seat won't wait for him. I believe he can understand. The war has just ended and there are many things to settle. The Scarlet Sun Empire also needs to rest and recuperate. He will definitely be busy with work." Ji Tianqing rejected Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's good intentions. His attitude was very firm as he insisted on leaving. Du Changchang and the other generals couldn't persuade him. They could only carry a heart full of regret as they respectfully sent him off from the discussion hall. When he reached the plaza outside the hall, Ji Tianqing stopped and cupped his fists to everyone. "Everyone, this seat will be leaving now. Take care of yourselves." After speaking, he turned and flew up into the sky, disappearing into the horizon as fast as lightning. Du Changchang and the other generals looked up at his departing figure. They shook their heads and whispered to each other, "Sigh, we finally won the war and defeated the Devil Race, but we didn't have the chance to have a drink with Marshal Ji. What kind of person do you think Marshal Ji is? He is powerful, his identity is mysterious, his methods are unfathomable, his military skills are divine, and he can predict the future. This is simply a perfect god. The most unbelievable thing is that Marshal Ji is so outstanding, but he doesn't care about worldly possessions, let alone fame. No matter how much the people of the world respect and worship him, he is indifferent and doesn't have the slightest bit of pride or arrogance. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.